Part 10. Fringe Artists in the Entertainment Industry. Author, Chizuda Xiaomao. Chapter 91. Chapter 91. Playing mahjong can also cause trouble. Master, go to Dongleshun. Chen Lian got into the car, closed the door and shouted directly. It's just 1 o'clock now, it's lunchtime. When I go to Zhang Guorong's apartment, I can only drink tap water. In the warm taxi, Chen Lian turned to look at Wang Zuxian and asked with concern, "Are you still cold?" Hey, why don't you ask me?" Leslie Chung couldn't help but uttered while sitting next to him, resentful like a child without candy. Chen Lian rolled his eyes at Zhang Guorong, tugged on his thick down jacket and said, "You are like a polar bear now, will you be cold?" Chen Lian was still not satisfied with his words, so he stretched out his hand to pull off Zhang Guorong's scarf. "I gave you a scarf last time, shouldn't you return it again?" Zhang Guorong immediately protected his scarf, and Wang Zuxian, wrapped in a coat 2 sizes too big, looked at Chen Lian and Zhang Guorong who were fighting with a smile. In the cold winter, if you have friends like this, you won't feel cold anymore. More than 20 minutes later, Chen Lian pushed open the taxi door with the scarf he grabbed, and felt very cordial as he listened to the friendly old DJ on Wang Fujing Street. Da. In Dongleshun's private room, Zhang Guorong worked tirelessly to mix the sesame paste, piously and attentively. "Zuxian, the sesame paste must be stirred 100 times clockwise to be authentic." Zhang Guorong stirred the chopsticks while giving Wang Zuxian popular science. Although it was not the first time for Wang Zuxian to come to the capital, it was the first time she heard the saying. She immediately picked up the chopsticks and followed Zhang Guorong to learn, stirring the sesame paste in circles. Chen Lian didn't have these particularities, so he just stirred it up a few times and started to cook the mutton. "I really admire the care and attention paid to these mutton shabu-shabu dishes. A sesame paste can give you a sense of molecular cuisine, which is also the forefront of the trend. The hot and tender mutton is simmered in a copper pot for a few times, then wrapped in thick sesame sauce and put into the mouth. The chill in the bones is instantly dissipated." Chen Lian squinted his eyes happily, feeling that this was life, and he would never eat baguettes again. Where is happiness? In the steaming copper pot. "Zuxian, this isn't your first time in the capital, right?" Chen Lian took a bite of mutton, then looked at Wang Zuxian and asked, "I remember you filmed commercials in the past 90 years, and it was quite a sensation at the time." Wang Zuxian nodded quickly, and then said with some excitement, "The fans in Beijing were so enthusiastic at that time. I made a joke when I tipped the driver in a taxi. We don't pay attention to tips. It's like looking down on others." Chen Lian smiled and then asked, "Are you not used to coming here in such a low-key manner this time?" Wang Zuxian shook her head, subconsciously biting the chopsticks beside her mouth and said, "I like the feeling now. No one knows, and I don't have to care about other people's opinions. I feel very safe. You won't have so much leisure later." Zhang Guorong took a bite of the mutton, and then said in a tone of someone who has come before, "The waiter just now must have recognized me, and someone will come to me to sign my autograph later." Chen Lian twitched the corner of his mouth, feeling that Zhang Guorong was getting more and more childish. "Wasn't it just the last time someone came to sign your autograph?" Wang Zuxian couldn't help but smile and said, yes, brother is the most popular." Of course Zhang Guorong looked arrogant and didn't notice that Wang Zuxian seemed to be coaxing a child, nor did he notice Chen Lian, who was as disgusted as an old father. The whole family made a fuss. After finishing their meal, the three of them signed more than a dozen signatures for the waiter before leaving Dongleshun smoothly. When he came out, Zhang Guorong patted Chen Lian on the shoulder and said proudly, "It's your first time to sign an autograph for someone. You have benefited from me." Chen Lian was too lazy to talk to Zhang Guorong. People wanted to invest in him in advance because he was handsome. "Let's go home and play mahjong," Zhang Guorong said excitedly after eating and drinking. Chen Lian was planning to go home. He stopped and looked at Zhang Guorong and said, "How can three people fight? Let's do it next time. I also have poker friends in Beijing. Wait for me to call someone." Zhang Guorong took out the phone and started calling people. "Chen Lian, you really have a lot of friends." When he came to Zhang Guorong's apartment in Beijing again, Chen Lian was treated as a servant by Zhang Guorong. "Wipe the table. Sweep here too. Make some coffee." Chen Lian angrily threw the rag in his hand and stared at Zhang Guorong. "If you don't work, stop talking." Wang Zuxian was sitting on the sofa eating fruit. Looking at the two people who were arguing again, she couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Where is happiness, there is happiness." Wang Zuxian hummed the song Chen Lian sang that day softly, and she just felt very happy now. Facing Chen Lian's fury, Leslie Chung confidently crossed his legs and said, "You don't have to do it. I'll call back to Xiangjiang now and stop your account." Chen Lian gritted his molar teeth and bent down to pick up the rag. It's not a shabby job to make money. After working for half an hour, Chen Lian cleaned Zhang Guorong's house. Before he could take a breath, there was a knock on the door. "Open the door." Zhang Guorong crossed his legs and drank coffee, showing off his capitalist posture very well. Chen Lian pulled off his gloves, took a deep breath to calm down, and prepared to take revenge on the card table. Gong Li, who was wearing exquisite makeup outside the door, looked calm but was thinking about why Zhang Guorong asked her to come over to play mahjong and why she mentioned that Wang Zuxian was also there. Click. The door lock rang, and when the door was opened and Chen Lian's face appeared in front of her eyes, Gong Li understood why Zhang Guorong called her over to play mahjong. Gong Li, who wanted to understand the key, looked at Chen Lian resentfully and really wanted to go up and strangle this guy to death. Chen Lian was also surprised that the person who came was Gong Li. He was stunned for a moment and then realized what he was doing. He looked at Gong Li and shouted, "Sister, come in quickly, it's cold outside." Hearing Chen Lian's caring words, Gong Li was not moved, only subconsciously vigilant. Chen Lian would not be so gentle before. He must have done something wrong. As soon as this idea came up, Gong Li shook her head, feeling that she had magnified Chen Lian's conscience. Damn, if this guy felt guilty. "Why didn't you tell me when you came back?" "I'll pick you up," Gong Li asked, looking into Chen Lian's eyes. "It's so troublesome, you're not a child," Chen Lian said, pulling Gong Li in. Wang Zuxian, who was eating fruit in the living room, heard the sound coming from the door and subconsciously wanted to stand up to take a look. As soon as she stood up, she was pulled by Zhang Guorong. "Don't move. I called Gong Li here on purpose. This is Chen Lian's good sister. Do you still have illusions now?" Zhang Guorong's words stunned Wang Zuxian. She turned to look at his serious expression and didn't know how to answer for a while. Some people are born to be prodigals. You can't catch them, and neither can Gong Li. Leslie Chung pulled Wang Zuxian to sit down and said earnestly, "It's better to be friends than lovers. He can't give you what you need." Wang Zuxian bit her lip, and the happiness she had accumulated when she first arrived in the capital disappeared in an instant. After Chen Lian at the door pulled Gong Li in, he looked at Wang Zuxian and Zhang Guorong, who were silent in the living room, and wondered why they stopped talking. "Brother," Gong Li shouted to Zhang Guorong with a smile, then looked at Wang Zuxian walking over and extending her hand and said, "Hello Zuxian, I am Gong Li, nice to meet you." Wang Zuxian raised her head and looked at Gong Li's confident and generous appearance. She was dazed for a moment before reaching out and shaking Gong Li's hand. "Hello, Wang Zuxian." Zhang Guorong took the initiative to break the inexplicable atmosphere at this time, stood up and clapped his hands and said, "Everyone is here, let's play mahjong and play mahjong." Looking at the somewhat depressed Wang Zuxian, Chen Lian frowned. He came to the capital to relax and unwind, so why did he suddenly become depressed? "What's wrong, Chen Lian walked over and looked at her frowning eyebrows and asked, "You were laughing at me just now, why are you unhappy now?" When Wang Zuxian raised her head and glanced at Gong Li, she paused for a moment, then looked at Chen Lian's face and hesitated and asked, "You and Gong Li are?" Halfway through her words, Wang Zuxian shook her head, stood up and said with a smile, "Let's go play mahjong. The money I lost to you that day will be won back today. Then you'd better stop dreaming. Your skills are worse than my brother's," Chen Lian said jokingly, looking at Wang Zuxian, who was smiling again. Wang Zuxian tilted her head and said, "That's not necessarily true." Zhang Guorong sat down at the mahjong table first, grabbed the dice and looked at the three people who were still standing, and quickly urged, "Come on, my hands are already itchy." Gong Li smiled, then pulled off her scarf and walked over to sit opposite Zhang Guorong and said with a smile, "I haven't played mahjong with my brother for a long time, I almost forgot how to play mahjong in Xiangjiang." "It's better if you forget, just be responsible for losing money." Zhang Guorong smiled happily, and then threw the dice in his hand. Chen Lian and Wang Zuxian looked at each other and sat down, starting a card game whose outcome was already determined. Chen Lian was already thinking about how much money he could win today, but he didn't expect that he would win so easily today. The main reason was that Wang Zuxian had been distracted while playing cards, and looked at Gong Li and Chen Lian from time to time. "Zuxian, what's going on with you today?" Zhang Guorong looked at Chen Lian and made a fool of himself again. He finally succeeded in winning the battle, and couldn't help complaining, "You've already set off several times for Lian." "You're not convinced?" Chen Lian smiled proudly, then took a look at Zhang Guorong and said with disgust, "You didn't even listen to the cards. If I don't do anything, it won't be your turn." Sister Gong Li also listened to the cards. Zhang Guorong was so angry that he wanted to throw a card. "Are there so many mahjong masters in the mainland? Here are the sparrow masters in Xiangjiang." Wang Zuxian forced out an apologetic smile at Leslie Chung, then looked at Chen Lian's happy look, smiled and took out the money and handed it to him, feeling that it was okay to lose some money, he had money. Gong Li looked at Wang Zuxian with a smile, her eyes flashed and she sighed secretly in her heart. Suddenly she thought of the situation when she met Chen Miran 2 days ago, and she suddenly wanted to laugh. Chen Miran is so naive. She even fantasizes that she can conquer Chen Lian. She is someone who can attract others wherever she goes, and it is impossible to catch her. Gong Li now understands, don't have any illusions, everyone can get what they need. Gong Li's eyes turned to Wang Zuxian, looking at her worthless smile, she really looked like her previous demeanor. "I just don't know if I will see it as clearly as I do in the future, or if I will be as ambitious as Chen Miran." Fringe artists in the entertainment industry. Author, Chizu de Xiaomao. Chapter 92. Chapter 92 Speech on the Launch and Speech on Sanjiang. Xiaopija is finally going to be on the shelves, it will be on the shelves in the early morning. Happy. As a newbie who has been on the street for several months, I did not expect to achieve the results I have achieved now. Originally I was just frustrated and wanted to write a self-pleasure novel, but I did not expect that so many big people would support and like it. To be honest, I feel a little flattered and scared. The more people support me, the more pressure I feel. I'm afraid that I won't be able to write well and let everyone down. Xiaopuja has never seen the big world and made everyone laugh. Originally, I wrote it based on my own wishes. Many book friends also complained that the previous writing was too literary and too neurotic. Later, when I saw such a big boss supporting it, I restrained myself a lot. Thank you all for liking it. This book has achieved its current success because of the encouragement of many people. For example, my manager and book club owner Shuelu have been encouraging me and giving me chicken soup. I am grateful for his chicken soup. I also want to thank Konggu and Guankun for their great suggestions when writing this book. I would also like to thank all the big guys who recommended Zhang before going to Sanjiang, including Fatty, Yufang Laopai, Fried Dajin, Unlucky Night, W Xiaoan, P Pickled Pepper G, Xiao Xiao Shishi, Blooming Huahuo, Ivy, Walking Alone in the Mountains, Dragon Language. Thanks to these big guys for their friendly comments, they are all good people. Well, the main event is here, and I want to thank all the big guys who gave rewards. Time 1979, Fairy Monk Beautiful Boy, Fukin Painting and Singing, Mulan Road Crossing, Divine Creation World, Lao Jiang Beiwo, Laxia, The Traveling Cat, Lily 599, Book Friends 20220329135220762, TDNDB, Book Friends 201707101343568682, A Fat Smasher with a Temper, The Cat and the Dead Fish Eyes, who is the rival of the Laughing Hero, the Prime Minister of the Giant Stinky Turtle, the Dragon Seal of the Sword Emperor, Fat Boyofe, Best Actor in Purple Mountain People, Ji Tianyi, Have a Midnight Snack at Night, Give Me an Update, Swallow, ZZZHZ, Book Friends 20170413144529202, Yehowa, The Complete Book of Random Stew, Plum Blossom Drunk in Three Lanes, Jid, Guzhang Yeming, Go to Bed Earlier Tomorrow, Book Friends 20220222114638005, Lightning in the Cloud, Merc, It's Really Difficult to Change Your Name, Books Friends 20210914231809783, Lonely Star, Akina Jiang's Cross-Century Boyfriend, Emperor Tang II, Silent Audience CMDGZ, Book Friends 20210181854585594, by Yukui LL, Li Jigu. Xiang Shang, Qing Liang, Book Friends 2019062922225276884, Book Friends 20190627202009485, Book Friends 20190524073131836, The Confusion of the Little Night 2020, Book Friends 20190213220438925, Readers 1412266634171465728, Poetry and Fantasy Belonging to Terra, Big Head Salmon, Book Friends 20181125222521206, Xiao Diu, Caesar Augustus, Master Tong Hui is here, Hui Wuhan, Book Friends 20171130183443281, Sichuan, The Rest of My Life is a Word. Book Friends 20170506162616415, Throne of the Abyss, Conan 2017, Book Friends 20170203214222222, Evening Breeze is Getting Late, Fat Ah, Reminiscing of the Past, Jiangnan with Snow, Skeleton of God, Star Master Tonight Fighting the Tiger, Wood and Earth 9 Days, Sun Ping Ping, Reading Cool, Life Without Chains, etc. All the big guys. Don't mind those who didn't write, there are too many, so I have to write selectively. I also thank you. Thank you for your monthly votes and tips. Old Pig. You have led me astray. I am a kitten riding a pig, not an old pig riding a cat. Mao Mao would like to thank you all for your support and encouragement. I love you all. After it is put on the shelves, I will do my best to update it with quality and quantity, and I will work hard to update it without losing quality. Because I work part-time, I can't transform into a tentacle monster like other authors. Please forgive me. If my grades are good and I can support myself by writing books, I will consider the possibility of full-time work. I will definitely update it when the time comes. Increase the dose. Finally, I would like to express my serious and sincere thanks again for your support. Xiapija will keep it in mind. Last, I will update 2 chapters after midnight, and I will continue to update tomorrow afternoon. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fringe artists in the entertainment industry. Author, Chizuda Xiaomao. Chapter 94. Chapter 94-92. Friends are different from friends. The most anticipated thing in winter in Beijing is the rising sun in the morning. After the cold night, the sun shines into the house through the glass, making people want to be unruly in bed for a while longer. Chen Lian now wants to go back to his bed and be wild for a while. In the past few months since he met Zhang Guorong, Chen Lian has stayed up all night as many times as he did in the past few years. Mahjong is really harmful. Zhang Guorong's fingers kept rubbing the mahjong, and his whole body was so nervous that he was shaking. 13. I haven't encountered a 13-year card type in a few months. The other three people at the card table looked at each other, and they all knew that Zhang Guorong had got a good card this time. After winking at each other, they all knew what was going on. Wang Zuxian now has experience in firing shots at Chen Lian. After taking a look at the cards Chen Lian played, he immediately split his own pair of 50,000 and played them out. Chen Lian glanced at it without any reaction. He kept counting the cards in his hand with a cigarette in his mouth. Wang Zuxian frowned, wondering if she had guessed wrong. Then the next round will cost 60,000. Zhang Guorong breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that Wang Zuxian didn't fire the cannon this time. He was really afraid that Chen Lian was acting up again. Gong Li saw the reactions of several people and threw out a card with a smile. 60,000. Zhang Guorong looked at Chen Lian nervously again, fearing that he would shout nonsense. Chen Lian glanced at Zhang Guorong, flicked the ashes of his cigarette, and then showed an embarrassed smile. What a fool, Chen Lian held the cigarette and pushed down the butt in his hand. He looked at Gong Li and said with a smile, "Sister, I finally caught you." Gong Li raised her eyebrows and said meaningfully, "I must have caught it more than once." Cough, Chen Lian coughed and pretended not to hear. How could he still be so stupid when he was acting in a show? Ah, Chen Lian, Zhang Guorong, who recovered from the shock, looked at Chen Lian crazily, grabbed his arm and shook him hard. "Take it back, don't do anything." Chen Lian remained unmoved, pointing to his cards and saying, "I didn't blow up my beard." "I don't care," Zhang Guorong said reluctantly, "I am 13, how can you compare with me?" Wang Zuxian covered her mouth and snickered. It had been a long time since she saw her brother playing cards and acting coquettishly. "The card game is like a battlefield, how can you cheat?" Chen Lian said firmly, not caring about the coquettish Zhang Guorong. Looking at the hard-hearted Chen Lian, Leslie Chung snorted angrily, folded his hands in front of his chest, and looked pitiful. Gong Li couldn't bear to see it anymore. She looked tentatively at Chen Lian and just wanted to persuade him, but Chen Lian glared back. Gong Li held the mahjong hand for a moment and swallowed her words slowly. It took a while before she realized why she felt guilty. "It's already dawn, it's time to go home and sleep." Chen Lian stretched and was about to stand up when Zhang Guorong grabbed him. "Don't leave. Keep fighting." Zhang Guorong grabbed Chen Lian's arm and refused to let him go. "Chen Lian, you are the reincarnation of the mahjong ghost." "No, childish." "One more round." Zhang Guorong stretched out a finger and looked at Chen Lian. The sunshine shining on Zhang Guorong's body formed a strong contrast with his appearance of being addicted to cards. Why is such a handsome guy so fond of playing mahjong? Zhang Guorong should have been born in Sichuan and Chongqing. "Okay, just one lap, no cheating this time." "Okay, promise not to cheat." 20 minutes later, Zhang Guorong watched with his own eyes as Chen Lian ended the lap with 4 butts. Zhang Guorong leaned back in his chair, waved his hand at Chen Lian helplessly and said, "Get out of here." "Okay." Chen Lian put the thick banknotes into his pocket and said to Gong Li and Wang Zuxian, "If the two beauties want to eat, I'll treat you." Yeah, Wang Zuxian suppressed a smile and nodded, but she really couldn't bear to laugh out loud and irritate Zhang Guorong. Gong Li kindly said to Zhang Guorong, "Brother, let's come together." Zhang Guorong turned his head away and said lifelessly, "I don't want to eat." "You go ahead. It's just a game of mahjong." "Look at you like this." Chen Lian grabbed Zhang Guorong and began to ask Gong Li and Wang Zuxian for help without any explanation. "Bring brother's clothes and let's go eat together." Wang Zuxian immediately ran to get Leslie Cheng's clothes and scarves and put them on for him. "Okay, let's go eat. The burnt rings are crunchy in your mouth. Drinking the bean juice makes your mouth smell bad." Wang Zuxian watched with admiration as Chen Lian and Gong Li drank the soy milk in big gulps. The sour smell of the soy milk lingered around the tip of their noses. She quickly picked up her own sweet soy milk and took a sip. Zhang Guorong was biting the fried dough sticks in his mouth, mumbling to himself, saying something about how to make 9 cakes. This guy is under a spell, and he probably won't be able to recover for 2 days. Chen Lian drank the bean juice in the bowl in one gulp, and after getting rid of the last burnt ring in his hand, he turned to Gong Li and asked, "Sister, are you busy today?" "What's wrong?" Gong Li asked while biting the focus ring. "Just ask if you have nothing to do." Chen Lian wiped his hands, then stood up and paid the money. Wang Zuxian drank soy milk and felt that something was not right about the conversation between Chen Lian and Gong Li just now, but she didn't know what was wrong. After everyone finished eating, Chen Lian and Gong Li were about to leave. Wang Zuxian looked at Chen Lian and suddenly asked, "Are you free tonight?" "Yes, what's wrong?" Chen Lian turned around and asked. A gust of cold wind blew by. Wang Zuxian tightened her coat and said, "I want to go shopping for clothes. Can you come with me?" Looking at Wang Zuxian's ill-fitting coat, Chen Lian nodded and said, "Okay, I'll come find you later." After Chen Lian and Gong Li walked away, Zhang Guorong stood next to Wang Zuxian and said, "Have you thought clearly?" "Huh?" Wang Zuxian turned to look at Zhang Guorong, pretending not to understand, holding his arm and saying, "It's so cold, let's go back quickly." Zhang Guorong shook his head and went back with Wang Zuxian. He had tried his best to say and do what he had to say. Let her go as she pleased. Chen Lian on the other side had just gotten into Gong Li's car when she grabbed the collar of his clothes. Looking at Gong Li's little face so close, Chen Lian blinked and asked, "Sister, what do you want to do?" Gong Li calmed down her slightly rapid breathing, let go of Chen Lian's clothes, smoothed him with her hands, and then said, "Go home and sleep." There were a lot of cars on the streets in the early morning, but Gong Li drove very fast and got home in 10 minutes. Chen Lian yawned sleepily. When Gong Li parked the car, he was pulled out of the car by Gong Li before he could say anything. Gong Li's bedroom layout was still the same as before, clean and lightly scented with rose incense. On the white sheets, Chen Lian held Gong Li's waist to bear the questioning of his good sister. "Why do you always like, hooking up with others?" Gong Li asked intermittently with a blush on her face, blurred eyes, and rapid breathing. Chen Lian endured Gong Li's pressure and took a breath before replying, "Sister, you have wronged me. Do you think I am in a flirting state now?" Gong Li personally felt Chen Lian's toughness and took a breath and said, "You are honest, but I don't want to care about you and do whatever you want. Good sister, have you punished me enough? It's time for me to express my apology." Chen Lian put his arm around Gong Li's slender waist and said. Gong Li gave him a charming look, and then said, "Let me see how you express your apology. Of course it makes my good sister so happy that she faints." Chen Lian is serious about apologizing, and he is also serious about making a good sister happy. After an unknown amount of time, Chen Lian opened his eyes in a daze and saw that it was already dusk outside. He rubbed his temples and quietly got up from the bed. Glancing at Gong Li, who was still sleeping soundly, Chen Lian put on his clothes and left quietly. After coming outside, Chen Lian couldn't help but shiver when the cold wind blew, and his mind suddenly became clearer. After taking a look at the time on the phone, Chen Lian stopped a yellow car and rushed towards Zhang Guorong's home. The heating in the car was very sufficient, making people feel sleepy. Chen Lian yawned and chatted casually with the driver. I heard that there was a cultural evening held on New Year's Day. I went to buy tickets and didn't even rush to buy tickets, the driver brother said and complained. The tickets have been bought by those scalpers, and the price increase is huge. Chen Lian smiled and said, you also have a holiday on New Year's Day. I heard that several dance troupes and art troupes came from the south. What's the name of the one who dances the peacock dance? The driver thought for a while and simply gave up. Anyway, I heard that there are many shows. If you want to, otherwise I wouldn't go. Chen Lian agreed nonchalantly. He was not interested in art evenings or anything like that. Dancers rarely had anything to do with the art world, and not many were related to the entertainment industry. In the literary and art circles, she is considered a solitary existence. Very few dancers are famous, and there are only a few dancers that the domestic public can name. Teacher Jin, Teacher Yang, There is also Lu Xiaoli, who is not famous for her dancing. The driver didn't care about Chen Lian's perfunctory behavior and kept chatting to himself. Drivers in Beijing all like to chat, and they don't care whether you listen or not. You can still have fun talking to yourself anyway. They are all nonsense. After a while, the car arrived at its destination. Chen Lian paid the fare and got out of the car. The driver almost said he was confused. Wang Zuxian upstairs was lying beside the window boredly. When he saw Chen Lian getting out of a taxi, he immediately became excited. He quickly ran to the bathroom and looked in the mirror, fixed his hair, and then relaxed after confirming that there was nothing wrong with him. One breath. Leslie Chung sat on the sofa and watched Wang Zuxian's movements. He couldn't help but sigh and said, "Can you be normal? You are so good looking. Isn't it easy to capture Chen Lian?" Wang Zuxian turned around and glanced at Zhang Guorong. The excitement dissipated a little, and then she said, "My brother, do you think he knows that I am not a good woman if he knows the gossip?" Zhang Guorong took a sip of red wine and said, "He is not a good man either. You guys are half measured. Wang Zuxian, you are really good at comforting people." Jingle. When the doorbell rang, Wang Zuxian immediately turned around and ran over. Just as he was about to open the door, he paused and took back his hand. After the doorbell rang 3 times, he opened the door. Chen Lian, who still had a tired look on his face, felt slightly refreshed when he saw the energetic Wang Zuxian. "Let's go now, or wait a while." Chen Lian tilted his head and glanced in and asked, "Brother, are you up? Don't you want to go together?" "He hasn't gotten up yet." Wang Zuxian walked out with her long legs, closed the door and said, "Let's go by ourselves." "Okay, let's go." Zhang Guorong in the room paused for a long time with his hand holding the wine glass before putting it down. "These are not friends, why can't they be treated equally? There are many young people on the streets of Xinjiang in the evening. Some have just finished get off work or get out of class, and they all have endless energy to waste." Chen Lian and Wang Zuxian walked through the crowd, and when they saw a suitable clothing store, they went in to browse. However, Wang Zuxian seemed to be very discerning and visited several stores without settling on any one. On the contrary, Chen Lian bought himself a wool coat in Bosnia and wore it to resist the cold wind. When passing by Xinjiang department store, Wang Zuxian took Chen Lian's hand and said, "Let's go in and take a look. I want to buy you a camera." Chen Lian was really not used to not having a camera in his hand. He lowered his head and glanced at Wang Zuxian holding his hand, then nodded in agreement. Wang Zuxian smiled. Even though she was wearing a mask and sunglasses, Chen Lian could still feel that she was very happy. After entering the mall, Wang Zuxian's hand did not let go and she kept holding Chen Lian. Wang Zuxian's palms were very soft and her skin was very delicate. Chen Lian turned his wrist and held her hand, holding hands while shopping like most couples in the mall. Feeling Chen Lian's warm palm, Wang Zuxian couldn't help but raise the corners of her mouth under the mask, and her walking pace became much brisker. On the third floor of the department store, Wang Zuxian and Chen Lian held hands and looked at the cameras in the cabinets, comparing different models and lenses, like a young couple on a budget. The shopping guide followed them and wanted to introduce the camera, but he opened his mouth several times and was interrupted by Chen Lian giving Wang Zuxian professional science education. An expert came, and the shopping guide simply didn't introduce him, and just acted as a follower behind him. Someone who knows the camera so well must be an intended customer, and he can definitely place an order with him. After Chen Lian looked at it for a while, he turned to the shopping guide and told her about the camera and lens he was interested in, and asked her to prepare the goods. There are so few cameras here. Wang Zuxian was a little dissatisfied. She always felt that the first gift she gave to Chen Lian was a bit random. Chen Lian smiled and said, "That's enough for me. The most important thing about photography is not the camera, but the person who presses the shutter." Wang Zuxian thought of the photos Chen Lian took of her and couldn't help but nod. She had taken many advertisements and photos in Xiangjiang. Those photographers had very powerful cameras, but the photos they took were not as good looking as those taken by Chen Lian. Soon the shopping guide brought a brand new camera and lens, along with a box of film. Chen Lian skillfully installed the camera, and while Wang Zuxian was paying, he quickly pressed the shutter button on her. Although Wang Zuxian in the camera is only wearing a mask and has taken off her sunglasses, her face is still unclear, but her bright eyes and tall figure are particularly conspicuous in the crowded shopping mall. The smile in her eyes looks like a runaway princess who has found her own happiness. Thanks to Mr. Miao, the boss who quietly takes over the world, for the leader reward. Thank you to Mr. Time 1979 who is about to become the leader of the alliance. Thank you for your support from the beginning. Fringe artists in the entertainment industry. Author, Chizu de Xiaomao. Chapter 95. Chapter 95-93. Not a knight but a prince. Under the dim street lights, light snow suddenly appeared in the sky, and the snowflakes swayed down, looking like the feathers of an angel falling under the illumination of the street lights. Wang Zuxian, wearing a brown woolen coat, stretched out her hand to catch a snowflake, feeling the cold touch in her palm, feeling particularly peaceful inside. It doesn't snow in Xiangjiang or Wanwan. Wang Zuxian has rarely seen snow. She raised her head and watched the snowflakes falling slowly against the light. She thought the scene was really beautiful. Chen Lian looked at Wang Zuxian's glowing figure under the street lamp, raised the camera in his hand and took another picture. The moment the shutter sounded, Chen Lian was grateful that the temperature was not that low. Hearing the crisp sound of the shutter, Wang Zuxian turned her head and looked at Chen Lian who was holding the camera, smiled sweetly, then turned in a circle on her feet, and the hem of her coat drew a beautiful arc. I haven't been so happy for a long time. Wang Zuxian took a deep breath, feeling the coolness of the cold air rushing into her lungs, and said with a smile, "It's like playing in the rain when I was a child. I just feel carefree. Everything is worth being happy about. Innocence is something that every adult will gradually lose." Chen Lian put the camera in his bag, lit a cigarette and said, "Especially people in the entertainment industry lose their innocence faster than anyone else." Wang Zuxian nodded lightly. She used to be happy every day when she was playing basketball. But since she entered the entertainment industry, there are fewer and fewer things that make her happy. There are always all kinds of worries. I want to be famous or make money, but I just can't think of the happiness I have lost. Fortunately, she seems to have recovered a little bit now. Wang Zuxian looked at the scarlet cigarette butt on Chen Lian's mouth, as if all his worries were burning, and then slowly dissipated in the air along with the smoke he exhaled, as if all the worries in his heart were gone. Dissipate together. Wang Zuxian hasn't smoked for a long time. Well, she likes to smoke cigars. Some fans joke that she is my brother Xian in society. Give me one, Let's see how you feel after smoking to relieve stress. Wang Zuxian stretched out her hand and said with a smile. Chen Lian raised his eyebrows, wondering why female stars in the entertainment industry like to smoke, but he still took out one and handed it to Wang Zuxian. Wang Zuxian took a gentle breath and looked at Chen Lian and said softly, "Do you know what I was thinking when I saw you crossing the railing to trouble that paparazzi that day?" Chen Lian shook his head and watched the snowflakes fall on Wang Zuxian's shoulders, and then were blown away by the wind. Night. Wang Zuxian put down the cigarette in his hand, looked at Chen Lian seriously and said, "Just like the knight who protects me, I feel very safe." "You are a princess and I am not a knight," Chen Lian joked to himself. "Knights are synonymous with loyalty, and I don't count." Chen Lian believed that he had no chivalry spirit, and Zhang Quarong was much better than him at this point. At best, he can be regarded as the shameless prince who kissed Sleeping Beauty awake, the kind who gets interested in sex. Wang Zuxian didn't know that Chen Lian's evaluation of her was just for sex. Listening to his self-deprecation, she frowned slightly, took his hand and said, "Loyalty will not appear until you meet a real princess." Wandering knight? Loyal licking. The word suddenly popped up in Chen Lian's mind, and then he looked at Wang Zuxian and said, "Maybe, but why can't I be a prince, the one who defeats the evil dragon?" Wang Zuxian really wants to say that I am the rescued princess. The warm yellow street lamp stretched the shadows of the two people very long and far away from each other in the same direction. Wang Zuxian looked at their faces covered by snowflakes, and saw the two shadows coming together without knowing when. Chen Lian escorted Wang Zuxian to the downstairs of the apartment, handed her the shopping bag in his hand and said, "Good night, I wish you a sweet dream." Wang Zuxian raised her head and glanced at the unlit window, looking at Chen Lian's bright and dark face under the street lamp. He hesitated for a moment and mustered up the courage to say, "Brother may be asleep, I don't have the key." Chen Lian held out Wang Zuxian's hand for a moment, then took Wang Zuxian's hand and said, "Are you going to take risks with the prince?" "Yes." Wang Zuxian pursed her lips and nodded gently, holding Chen Lian's hand, and couldn't help but wave it slightly. Chen Lian came to Kunlun Hotel for the first time. The environment here is very good and the carpet is so soft that it will sink in if you apply gentle force. The atmosphere in the room with only the wall lamp on was just right. Through the open curtains, you could see the snowflakes flying in the sky. Chen Lian put his arms around Wang Zuxian's slender waist and gently rubbed his white woolen sweater with his palms. Wang Zuxian rested her chin on Chen Lian's shoulder, exuding a faint fragrance, and her long black hair was scattered on Chen Lian's arms. There was no need for tender words at this moment. The two hugged each other gently, feeling each other's gradually accelerating heartbeats and slowly warming bodies. Chen Lian turned his head and used his slender fingers to push aside the hair beside Wang Zuxian's face. His fingers slid across the bridge of her nose and red lips, gently pinched her chin, lowered his head and kissed her. Wang Zuxian hugged Chen Lian's waist and responded to his kiss. Her palms were slightly firm on his back and grabbed his clothes, as if she was resisting but enjoying it. The desire in their hearts was completely ignited by this kiss, and each other's hands began to move restlessly. Soon, several large and small clothes were scattered on the soft carpet. The two people who were kissing fiercely accidentally bumped into the wall and turned off the only wall lamp that was on. The weather after the light snow was gloomy. God seemed not satisfied with yesterday's masterpiece. The silver on the ground was not thick enough, so snowflakes fell again. While sleeping, Chen Lian hugged Wang Zuxian's warm body, subconsciously exerting gentle force with his fingers, and suddenly felt enveloped in warmth and softness. Wang Zuxian, who was lying in Chen Lian's arms, twisted her body, opened her eyes drowsily, looked at Chen Lian's beautiful chin, and stretched out her tongue like a cat to lick it gently. Chen Lian was sleeping deeply, and this action did not wake him up. Wang Zuxian pushed the hair from his forehead, raised his head slightly and looked at Chen Lian's face, then lay on his chest and listened to his heartbeat. When the two woke up again, they were awakened by the ringing of the phone. Chen Lian lay on the bed and grinned it on the ground for a long time before he found the phone that had fallen to the ground. "Who are you?" Chen Lian's voice was hoarse. "It's me. Where did you take Xiao Xian?" Zhang Guorong's voice immediately came from the other end of the phone, resembling an angry old father. Chen Lian regained consciousness a little, cleared his throat and said, "She is with me, what happened?" Of course Zhang Guorong knew that Wang Zuxian and Chen Lian were together, so he snorted and said, "Take good care of her, if you dare." Chen Lian hung up the phone before Zhang Guorong finished speaking. He talked nonsense early in the morning, saying that he should have won more money from him yesterday. However, being woken up by the phone, Chen Lian couldn't sleep anymore. Looking at Wang Zuxian, who was still sleeping soundly, he lifted the quilt and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window to look at the vast white outside. Then he looked back at Wang Zuxian's little feet on the bed, which were hugged outside the quilt. "I just feel my mouth is a little thirsty. My mouth is dry easily when I wake up in the morning. I still need to exercise to activate blood circulation and promote fluid production." After finishing breakfast and leaving the hotel, Wang Zuxian held Chen Lian's arm and asked, "How about we go see the Great Wall today? I didn't have time to go last time." Chen Lian looked at the sky where snow was still falling and said, "It's snowing today, so I can't climb the Great Wall." "Then wait until the weather clears up before we go." Wang Zuxian looked at Chen Lian as if he was making a promise. Chen Lian responded with a smile, "Okay." She went to bed too late yesterday and woke up early in the morning. Wang Zuxian was obviously not in good spirits today. She fell asleep while leaning on Chen Lian's shoulder in the taxi with her eyes squinted. Chen Lian held Wang Zuxian's head with one hand and held the phone with the other hand, listening to Zhang Guorong's chatter on the other end of the phone. "Why haven't you come back yet? I'm going to starve to death. Just eat your fill and ignore me, right? What a scumbag. I shouldn't have brought Xiao Xian to the mainland." After listening to Zhang Guorong's ramble for a few minutes, Chen Lian couldn't imagine his current mental state. After arriving at the apartment, he had no choice but to run back and buy Leslie Chung a bunch of food. There are no baguettes for Zhang Guorong to eat in the apartment in Beijing, so we can't starve him. In the apartment, Leslie Chung looked at Wang Zuxian, who was a little shy, and said angrily, "You can't live up to your expectations and hang him for a few more days. How can one control things that cannot be controlled?" Wang Zuxian pretended not to hear Zhang Guorong's words. How can you catch Chen Lian without some tricks? Zhang Guorong hated Tai Buletin Gang. Now that things have happened, he naturally hopes that Wang Zuxian and Chen Lian can finally get together. Only then did Wang Zuxian react, and then asked curiously, "So you just drove him away? Brother, teach me." "Not too stupid." Zhang Guorong knocked Wang Zuxian on the head. Chen Lian, who has already left, still doesn't know that Leslie Chung is teaching Wang Zuxian how to capture a man's heart. He is just thinking about the National Art Exhibition that will start tomorrow. There are so many entries, and I don't know if I can win a prize. It would be best if I could win a gold medal. However, it seems that the gold medal has been cancelled this year, and there is only a Unified Excellence Award. This makes Chen Lian a little regretful. It would be a bit unsatisfactory if he only won an Excellence Award in his first National Art Exhibition. When Chen Lian returned to his yard, he frowned when he saw that the door to his room was unlocked. When he opened the door and went in, he saw Bo Qing holding a paintbrush in his hand and drawing. Chen Lian looked at Bo Qing in surprise and asked, "You never left?" Bai Qing held the brush in one hand and the palette in the other and looked at Chen Lian and said, "No, I have a lot of inspiration recently and want to try more." Look, Bo Qing took a step back and showed the painting he just drew. Chen Lian walked over and looked at Bo Qing's nearly completed painting, with a flash of excitement in his eyes. The black and white photo depicts a figure with rich colors and a graceful figure full of power, as if she is fighting against the oppressive environment in the photo, as if she has broken through the shackles of the dimensional wall and gained true freedom. Bai Qing. You are amazing. This is the feeling I want. Chen Lian stood up excitedly and hugged Bai Qing, who was covered in paint. This was the first time he was so excited in front of Bai Qing. He was no longer the calm and restrained Chen Lian. I have revised it several times, and I hope it will be published smoothly. I will update 2 more chapters tomorrow afternoon. The first day is 15,000, which is a chapter for the leader of the alliance. Fringe artists in the entertainment industry. Author, Chizu de Xiaomao. Chapter 96. Chapter 96-94. Conflicting Soul. The light snow stopped in the evening, and the heavy clouds in the sky were also taken away by the north wind. The flickering stars appeared again in the night. In Chen Lian's room, the tungsten lamp emitted light and heat, illuminating the entire room. In front of the erected easels, Chen Lian and Bai Qing each held paint brushes and applied color on the large black and white photos. The two of them painted on a painting together, with different strokes, but there was a natural tacit understanding, and the combination of dazzling colors unexpectedly fit together. There is no verbal communication between the two people. When the brushes cross each other, it is like they have a telepathic connection, filling in the missing piece for each other. As the colors in the photos became more and more colorful, the frequency of the two people's flower lake began to slow down, and the brush in their hands was changed to the smallest size, carefully outlining every detail. The shooting angle of the black and white photo is an extremely oppressive high-rise mansion, which symbolizes etiquette and class, symbolizing bondage and oppression. The colorful people are like a bird trapped in a net, struggling hard even if its wings are broken. The face of the person painted in the photo is blurred. It does not refer to anyone in particular, but it can be anyone. More than an hour later, the two of them put down their brushes at the same time, separated from the passion of creation, and stared blankly at the newly completed painting in front of them. After a while, Chen Lian murmured, "We succeeded." Bai Qing seemed to have exhausted all her strength, leaning on Chen Lian's shoulder, with a tear falling from the corner of her eye. She saw herself in this painting, saw herself who insisted on painting but was not understood, saw the self who lives in a dilapidated single room and struggles hard. "Chen Lian, thank you." Chen Lian leaned on the back of the chair, his hand hanging on the ground, and the paintbrush in his hand painted a bright red on the dusty ground. Chen Lian, whose brain seemed to have been hollowed out, had no reaction when he heard Bai Qing's thanks. He also had a thank you in his heart, but he didn't have the strength to say it out now. The two of them cuddled together and sat in front of the painting for a long time, speechless. The sun was just right the next day, and the rising sun was like a red egg on a full moon wine, round and bright, full of joy. Chen Lian sat in front of the mirror, wrapped in a sheet with holes in it. Bo Qing stood behind him with scissors, cutting his hair bit by bit. Chen Lian tilted his head slightly, looked at the uneven hair in the mirror, and couldn't help but said, "Can't I go out and get a haircut?" There was a metallic friction sound as the coldly glowing scissors opened and closed, causing Chen Lian's slightly raised body to sit back down. Bo Qing tilted her head and held Chen Lian's shoulders and said, "No, I've always wanted to try cutting other people's hair, but no one will let me cut it except you." "Then can you cut it well?" "I'm going to take my friends to the art exhibition today." Chen Lian looked at Bo Qing in the mirror and whispered his opinion. "I'll try my best." Bo Qing held a cigarette in one hand and scissors in the other, looking more like a murderer than a barber. Bai Qing took a puff of the cigarette and cut off a bit of hair around Chen Lian's ear with the scissors in his hand, looking as if he was driving screws into the rocket seriously. "Who are you making an appointment with today?" Bai Qing flicked the cigarette butt, and a piece of grey ash fell to the ground and broke into pieces. Chen Lian lowered his head and looked at the cigarette ashes at his feet covered by the falling hair, and replied softly, "Zhang Guorong." Hearing this, Bai Qing raised his thin eyebrows, as if he was surprised that the friendship between Chen Lian and Leslie Chung was unexpectedly deep. "However, when I thought about it, I seem to have never taken the initiative to understand Chen Lian's life, nor his social circle. He came here from Xiangjiang specifically to see the art exhibition. Bai Qing glanced at the almost burned cigarette butts on the ground and continued to ask, does he like art? The cigarette butt fell to the ground and burned into the broken hair, giving off a mushy smell. Chen Lian sniffed and knew that the art Bo Qing was talking about here was oil painting, not movies or music, so he explained, he came here for a vacation and visited the art exhibition. He is not very interested in oil painting. Bo Qing nodded lightly and did not continue to talk about this topic. Leslie Chung is a big star, but she is not star chasing. Her idol is Georgia O'Keeffe, the mother of American modern art. Chen Lian's long hair was constantly cut under Bai Qing's scissors, and the fine pieces of hair kept falling. Soon Chen Lian changed from a melancholy male god to a sunny and cheerful boy. Looking at himself in the mirror with short hair, Chen Lian was a little uncomfortable with it. Moreover, Bai Qing's technique was not very good and the ends of his hair were not trimmed smoothly, but if you look closely, it was very layered. Bai Qing was very satisfied with his work. He gently moved his white and tender hands on Chen Lian's hair and carefully swept away all the broken hair. Looking at Chen Lian in the mirror, Bo Qing hugged his chin from behind and placed it on the top of his head. He blinked his crescent-shaped eyes and said softly, "You are so beautiful." "Because you cut your hair well," Chen Lian smiled, grabbed Bai Qing's hand and asked, "Can I think that you are bragging?" Bai Qing took his palm out of Chen Lian's hand, touched his chin and said, "Of course not. You are inherently good-looking, so good-looking that it makes people jealous. I really want to lock you in at home and let me admire you alone. I'm not a cat or a dog. Even if I have a cat, it still wants to climb up the wall and go for a walk. You are the heart-stealing cat." Chen Lian didn't know whether Bo Qing was stealing someone's heart or sex, but it would be fine if he wasn't a loyal dog. "Are you going to the art exhibition today?" Chen Lian brushed his hair and took off the sheets he was wearing and asked. "No, I'm going to the old summer palace painter village to find Ji Fa." Bai Qing sat on the edge of the bed and swayed his legs. He wore a pair of thick white cotton socks on his feet, and his toes curled up restlessly. "Why is she going to the painter's village?" Chen Lian asked doubtfully. Bai Qing looked at Chen Lian and explained, "Find a painter with the same potential as you. She is planning to hold an exhibition of Chinese young artists' works in Europe next year." "Okay then, I'll go to the art exhibition by myself." Chen Lian nodded, simply packed up and left. In the room, Bai Qing got off the bed, put on Chen Lian's cotton slippers, and pulled out a box from under the bed. The box is full of her clothes, and she has been living here for several days. After choosing a random set of clothes and changing into them, Bo Qing closed the door and went out. When the adults and aunts who were stacking briquettes in the yard saw Bai Qing leaving, they joked together, "Xiao Chen's girlfriend is so pretty." When Bai Qing, who had just stepped out of the courtyard, heard these words behind him, he smiled with crooked eyebrows and was extremely happy. Although not yet, it will be sooner or later. The National Art Exhibition can be regarded as the most watched art exhibition in the domestic art circle every year. It brings together the works of artists from all over the country and also represents official recognition. The value of the National Art Exhibition is still very high. On the first day of the exhibition, painters from all over the country gathered together. However, there are relatively few foreign artists and art critics coming. Most of them know the procedures of the first day of the art exhibition and will not join in the fun at this time. Wearing a knitted hat, Chen Lian is not conspicuous in the crowd, and he does not have as many friends as other painters. Just smoking in the corner at the entrance of the exhibition hall, Leslie Chung and Wang Zuxian haven't arrived yet, and Chen Lian is waiting for them. The art exhibition is very formal, to be precise, there are many formalities. Chen Lian will have to go through the procedures later when he receives Zhang Guorong and Wang Zuxian. The painters whose works can be exhibited will naturally have to show up, and if they win an award, the process will be more complicated. For example, speeches of gratitude and other aspects. Chen Lian doesn't know yet whether he has won the award, and he will not know until a while. Fortunately, the weather today is good. The sun is warming his body now. It's not too cold for Chen Lian to stand at the door. However, Zhang Guorong and Wang Zuxian were indeed a little slow. They were unwilling to come back tomorrow. They insisted on coming today to see if Chen Lian won the award. Chen Lian waited at the door for more than 10 minutes before Zhang Guorong and Wang Zuxian arrived fully armed. "You are too slow, it will start soon," Chen Lian couldn't help complaining. Zhang Guorong snorted arrogantly, took off the sunglasses on his face and said, "Xiao Xian and I need to dress up. If we are recognized, we will steal your limelight." Chen Lian: "Okay, that makes sense." When Wang Zuxian saw that Chen Lian was alone, he walked to the side and took off his gloves, took his hand and said apologetically, "I got up late, I don't blame my brother." Chen Lian's palms were a little cold. After being held by Wang Zuxian, they immediately warmed up a lot. He smiled and said to her, "It's okay. I'm just bored of waiting." "Okay, let's go in, it's about to start." Chen Lian pulled Wang Zuxian and walked inside. Zhang Guorong followed behind, looking at Wang Zuxian's clinging look, and whispered in a low voice, "I taught you yesterday for nothing." The process of the art exhibition was indeed very cumbersome. First there were speeches by the leaders of the cultural department and then by the leaders of the association, followed by sharings by some well-known artists. The form was not artistic at all and was very rigid. Chen Lian and the others were a little bored sitting in the audience. Fortunately, the speakers who took the stage also knew that the people here today were all painters and did not like this form, so they did not make long speeches. But even so, it took nearly an hour to complete all the procedures. Chen Lian also appeared on stage and his work won the National Excellence Award. Wang Zuxian and Leslie Chung looked at Chen Lian receiving the award and were both happy for him. Wang Zuxian pulled Zhang Guorong with some excitement and asked, "Brother, is this award particularly impressive, nationwide? It should be very powerful." "I don't know much about it." Zhang Guorong also doesn't know much about the value of the National Art Exhibition. "It must be very powerful." "The National Art Exhibition sounds very powerful," Wang Zuxian said with certainty, then took Zhang Guorong's arm and asked, "Then do I want to celebrate him? Give him a gift." Zhang Guorong glanced at Wang Zuxian and said speechlessly, "You have sent yourself to the bed, what else do you want to send?" Wang Zuxian: "Why is my brother's mouth so vicious only for her? Why do you, when you are with Chen Lian?" Chen Lian on the stage looked at the trophy in his hand and felt a little excited in his heart. There are many award-winning works this year. Although Chen Lian is only one of them, it still caused a lot of discussion. Chen Lian's previous film festivals have already made him famous in the circle. Everyone present has either been to the film festival, or those who have not been to the film festival have heard of this name. Especially when Chen Lian's works were exhibited, many painters felt novel. The style and painting method of Awakening are not in line with the mainstream in China. They are different from the current mainstream realism and the preceding gaudy art and popism. It is more like a combination of representationalism and imagism. The two very conflicting styles are well integrated. The concrete figures are like droplets of water blending into the background of the image. The background of the image is like an imaginative space derived from the inner world of the characters in the painting, which perfectly integrates the entire painting to form a very unique style. Chen Lian stood in front of his painting and chatted with several painters about his creative inspiration and ideas. The artist's thinking was very divergent, and the content of the chat had no fixed theme. Zhang Guorong and Wang Zuxian stood not far away, listening to a group of painters talking about various misty words, and looked at each other in confusion. "Brother, what are they talking about? I can't understand it," Wang Zuxian asked with some frustration. There was also a flash of thought in Zhang Guorong's eyes under his sunglasses. He had a certain understanding of art, but compared with these painters, he was far behind. He once thought about becoming a painter or designer, but later gave up due to some reasons. Now he prefers movies and music. Compared with fine arts, movies and music are not so profound. They are more popular and more popular. There are not so many weird schools and isms. Well, you still need to study more. John Kwarong pondered for a while and said, there is a big difference between movies and oil paintings. They are different in many aspects. Let's learn more about them in the future. Movies are very popular and easy to understand, which is why film art has always had a low status in the art circle. There are many people who like movies, far more than those who like art, but movies have carried certain entertainment and commercial attributes from the day they were born. This is destined to be an art for the masses, not an art respected by a small group of people in the art circle. The birth of oil painting is more about the painter's inner feelings in order to move and please himself, while the film is about moving and pleasing the audience. The two have different starting points. It's hard to judge which one is better between the two. In the hearts of the public, movies are more popular, but in the hearts of artists, film art is less valued. Wang Zuxian felt a little disappointed. Looking at Chen Lian, who was talking eloquently and confidently, she suddenly felt that she and he were in two different worlds. The Chen Lian who talks about art and the Chen Lian in life are completely two different people, so contradictory that one wonders whether he has two souls. John Kwarong saw Wang Zuxian's low mood, deliberately found a topic to divert attention and said, "Aren't you curious about who the person Chen Lian painted?" Speaking of this, Wang Zuxian was indeed attracted and asked curiously, "Who is it? Brother, do you know him? Are they the confidants you mentioned?" John Kwarong looked at the person in the painting and shook his head, and said with some emotion, "I underestimated Chen Lian." Wang Zuxian. Is this another opponent? Wang Zuxian was a little discouraged. Although everyone was on the same starting line, there were probably too many people participating. Fortunately, Chen Lian is single, otherwise he wouldn't be the mistress, the fifth or the sixth. I was squeezed by the capitalists today. I will update one chapter first. There are still 4,000 words left in the evening. 15,000 is absolutely no problem. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fringe artists in the entertainment industry. Author, Chizu de Xiaomao. Chapter 97. Chapter 97-95. Art is not pure. There are no extra decorations in the empty exhibition hall, only spotlights and paintings on the white walls. Such a simple space has the power to calm people down. The art exhibition was very lively and there were many people watching the paintings. Most of them kept silent. They would only chat with their companions when they saw the paintings they liked. It seems that making loud noises is a blasphemy against art. An exhibition like the National Art Exhibition is inherently serious, which is naturally different from the restlessness of modern art exhibitions in previous years. A few years ago, some people even fired shots at modern art exhibitions in public as a performance art. The artist's enthusiasm almost pushed that exhibition to the pinnacle of Chinese art history. However, the damage caused by fanaticism was also particularly profound. After that, performance art completely became underground art. The East Village, where performance artists gathered, was also affected by the remaining waves and was completely banned last year. Modern art has never been personal art. Enthusiasm and wantonness can easily be labeled as deviant. Chen Lian has been suppressing the restlessness in his heart, telling himself that art is not crazy. A real artist is never really a madman. He may look like a psychopath, but he always remains calm and rational in his heart. Turning yourself into a rabid lunatic for the sake of art is something only a true lunatic would do. Wang Zuxian and Zhang Guorong, who were wandering around the art exhibition, were a little bored, especially Zhang Guorong. He just wanted to play a few rounds of mahjong in a vulgar way. He didn't like the works in the art exhibition very much. Although Wang Zuxian felt bored, she still appreciated these poorly understood paintings very seriously. Just like her brother said to her, only by improving her artistic accomplishment can she truly capture Chen Lian's heart. Wang Zuxian felt a little frustrated. In the past, she could capture the hearts of countless men just through her beauty, but now she has to look at oil paintings pitifully for one man. If the world is not worthy, it is better to become a monk. On the other side, Chen Lian, who listened to the organizers' judges chatting for a long time, found Wang Zuxian and Zhang Guorong, who were admiring the oil paintings, with a headache. Seeing Wang Zuxian admiring an oil painting of a bumper harvest, Chen Lian walked over and asked, "Have you never seen such a pastoral harvest?" Wang Zuxian, who had just wanted to become a monk, heard Chen Lian's voice and immediately jumped for joy, turned to look at him and asked, "Are you done?" "Well, there's nothing going on." Later Chen Lian glanced at Zhang Guorong, who was a little bored, took out his phone and looked at the time and said with a smile, "It's getting late, let's go eat." "Okay," Zhang Guorong responded immediately, more actively than playing mahjong. Wang Zuxian also nodded and said with a smile, "Okay, then I'll treat you to a treat to celebrate your win." "It's just a small award, no need to celebrate." Chen Lian didn't think this was worth celebrating. There were so many excellence awards this time, and they were far less valuable than the gold award. "Don't worry about those little things, go eat first." Leslie Chung pulled Wang Zuxian and Chen Lian away, hurriedly trying to escape from here as soon as possible. Chen Lian looked at Zhang Guorong in confusion and asked, "I remember that you like collecting oil paintings. Why are you so impatient?" "I just don't like the style of oil painting here," Zhang Guorong explained again, "and today I want to play a few rounds of mahjong." Chen Lian was helpless, suspecting that he was still upset that the 13th unit was not completed that day. "Do you have anything to do this afternoon? Let's go play mahjong," Zhang Guorong asked. Chen Lian shook his head and said, "I don't have time in the afternoon. I have to go see my art manager." "What happened?" Wang Zuxian asked curiously from the side. Chen Lian explained with a smile, "The jury just told me that they will select a few outstanding works to represent the country in next year's Venice Biennale." Chen Lian never expected that he would have the opportunity to represent domestic artworks at the Venice Biennale by participating in the National Art Exhibition. The Venice Biennale has separate national pavilions, and participating countries can display some of their domestic artworks. When China first participated, it only sent a few pieces of porcelain to participate. Later, it slowly added many contemporary works of art. Originally, Chen Lian and Ji Fa discussed holding 2 art exhibitions in Europe before the Venice Biennale. After gaining some fame in the international art world, they would then participate in exhibitions in exhibition halls other than the National Pavilion. "I didn't expect that I would have the opportunity to directly participate on behalf of the country, but this opportunity is not so easy to obtain." The judges were still debating which work to choose, and they were just announcing the winners of the art exhibition in advance. However, Chen Lian saw something different from this move. As we all know, modern artworks need to be packaged and marketed, and there are many sayings and routines involved, which may even involve some abnormal transactions. This time the jury released the news in advance, which is very intriguing. Why not just select them and then notify them later? Chen Lian couldn't help but shook his head, and then stopped thinking about the problem. When he saw Ji Fa in the afternoon, he would ask her for advice from a professional. After having lunch with Leslie Chung and Wang Zuxian, Chen Lian ran away decisively. Both of them wanted to drag him to stay. One wanted Chen Lian to play mahjong with her, and the other wanted Chen Lian to take her shopping. How can a man lose his mind by playing with things and indulge in female sex? Chen Lian took a taxi to the old summer palace painter's village, where hundreds of artists and rock players gathered. The overall atmosphere was so good that it was disbanded next year. The reason for disbandment is similar to that of East Village. When a group of artists come together, the impact is huge and uncontrollable. Of course, the main reason is that the times are progressing and urbanization has reached this point. Old and dilapidated buildings will naturally be submerged by the tide of the times. Painter Village is much more lively than Songchuan, but the environment is similar to Songchuan, the same old and rundown. Chen Lian was walking on the street and saw painters standing in the snow in groups of twos and threes, smoking and chatting together. It felt very comfortable and relaxing. The only thing that made him feel noisy was the heartbreaking roars and roars coming from several yards. Restless music. I don't know which band is going crazy. The songs they sing are noisy and have nothing to appreciate. At this time, there were many people playing rock music, but few were famous for it. Most people just liked it but didn't have much talent. Many people even just do it to show off and smell honey. Chen Lian walked around the village and soon found Jifa in a courtyard. Her blonde hair was very eye-catching in the sun. Bai Qing stood beside her, looking a little bored in a hat and scarf. Chen Lian walked over and saw Jifa chatting with a thin painter with long hair. There was a pop-style oil painting in front of them. On the canvas was an exaggerated image of a man with an open mouth and a big smile. Bai Qing noticed Chen Lian first, ran over immediately, held up his hat and asked, "Coming here so soon?" "Well, have you found a suitable painter?" Chen Lian raised his hand and straightened Bai Qing's hat and asked. Bo Qing looked back at Jifa and the painter and said with some disappointment, "No, most of the paintings here are not good enough." "You don't like it?" "Or Jifa doesn't like it?" Chen Lian pulled his scarf and asked. "I don't like them all." Bo Qing frowned and said, "These people have become impetuous when they get together, and the things they draw have a cynical flavor, which I don't like very much." Chen Lian looked at the pop-style oil paintings with exaggerated colors and felt that Bo Qing was right. These paintings were indeed a bit excessive. "I have always felt that Popism is not suitable for Chinese painters." Bo Qing and Chen Lian stood side by side and looked at the painter chatting with Jifa. "I have been too severely impacted by Westernism. I have lost my correct understanding and blindly the chase will only go further and further." "A tree without roots," Chen Lian continued, "the current social atmosphere is the same. Free and unrestrained, all the traditional concepts are thrown away at once, and they have a negative attitude towards themselves and society. It will only become completely different in the end. I feel like this place will be like the East Village," Bai Qing said with a sigh. Chen Lian turned his head and looked at Bo Qing in surprise, not expecting that she also had a keen sense of politics. Bai Qing looked at Chen Lian's surprised expression and asked, "You don't believe it?" "No, I'm pretty sure, but compared to the East Village, it's still a little better here. At least there aren't that many performance artists." Chen Lian shook his head and explained. Bai Qing nodded. In terms of artistic enthusiasm, this place was indeed a little different from the East Village. It was more like a group of people gathering here to keep warm, like a gypsy camp. "What are you talking about?" Jifa finished chatting with the painter. He came over and looked at Chen Lian, whom he hadn't seen for several days, and asked, "How does it feel to go to Xiangjiang?" "Not bad, I made a few friends," Chen Lian replied lightly, feeling that something was wrong with the way Jifa looked at him. Jifa's blue eyes were very beautiful, staring at Chen Lian's beautiful face, and said with some disappointment, "I've been in a terrible state these days. Why are there only one Bai Qing and one Chen Lian? The painters here are too immature. Perhaps you should go to the art exhibition to see some very good works," Chen Lian suggested. "I will go," Jifa sighed and said, "I always feel that art around the world is withering, and there are fewer and fewer artists with potential." Chen Lian said unequivocally, "Maybe it's because living standards have improved." "That's right," Jifa nodded in agreement, "most excellent works are created in a difficult environment. An environment that is too generous will only corrode the artist's soul. Chen Lian smiled and said to Ji-fa, cherish the present, art will become cheaper and cheaper in the future. It's so cheap that you can call yourself an artist just by taking a few incomprehensible videos. The cost of artistic creation has changed from consuming the artist's inspiration and passion to consuming several bars of phone battery. Ji-fa, who found nothing in Yuanminjia Yuan village, could only leave with disappointment. In a cafe in Xinjiao, after Ji-fa heard Chen Lian talk about the art exhibition, he thought for a while and said, this is indeed a good opportunity, but it may not be that simple. I know, that's why I asked for your opinion. Chen Lian took a sip of coffee and said, it might be troublesome to fight for it. My personal opinion is to let it happen. If Ji-fa were a Chinese from 20 years later, he would definitely smile and ask how much it would take to win that spot. Ji-fa thought for a while and said, I think you should fight for it. After all, it is a good opportunity. The Venice Biennale is very valuable. If you win the award, the value of all your works will increase. The most important thing is that you have so few works now that I can't even curate an exhibition for you. Ji-fa sighed with some disappointment before saying, I originally wanted to find a few more works like yours. We wanted to organize a young painter exhibition with equally talented painters, but unfortunately we couldn't find them. Can't the film festival be allowed? Chen Lian asked with a frown. Ji-fa stirred the coffee and said, of course you can, but they won't understand your previous film festival in Europe because the social environment is different. Chen Lian looked at the exquisitely decorated coffee shop, then turned to look at the ancient street outside the floor-to-ceiling windows and said, I don't only have that set of works. Do you have a new work? Ji-fa asked, putting down the spoon in his hand. Chen Lian nodded and said, that's right, but it's only half completed. The theme is Xiangjiang, the two sides of the city. Chen Lian was afraid that Ji-fa wouldn't understand pigeon cage, so he changed the word. When Ji-fa heard that Chen Lian had new works, he couldn't help but marveled that this was too prolific. However, he soon realized that being a prolific artist also meant that he was of low value. You are too prolific, this is not good. Ji-fa couldn't help but said, you must control your inspiration in the future, otherwise it will become cheap. Chen Lian was impressed by Ji-fa's theory and could only nod his head and said, okay, I won't talk to you anymore. Ji-fa, do you still want to go it alone? Bai Qing, who was standing next to him, finally couldn't help but laugh and interjected, he can't control his inspiration. He is very talented. You shouldn't limit it. Just control the quantity of his works that are released. I know. Ji-fa rolled his eyes at Chen Lian, and then said seriously, you should know that my duty is to help you sell your works at high prices. Although this is tacky, it is very important. I understand, otherwise I wouldn't sign a contract with you. Chen Lian is not a rigid person, nor is he pretentious and thinks that money cannot be discussed in art, and that talking about money is tacky. Why can't artists make money? Artists also need to make a living. Okay, now take me to see your half-finished work. Ji-fa can't wait. Now that there is no alternative for the youth art exhibition, she can only hope that Chen Lian can create better works. Art managers also need to make money. How can they maintain the dignity of artists if they don't make money? 15,000 completed, I owe the boss an extra -1. Don't scold me anymore, continue to do it tomorrow. Ali gives. Fringe artists in the entertainment industry. Author, Chizu de Xiaomao. Chapter 98. Chapter 98-96. Art requires talent and packaging. In the extremely dark darkroom, there are many photos on strings, and water drops are dripping under the red light. Chen Lian lowered his head and held a photo with a clip, gently shaking it in the water. The photo showed a woman in a skirt sitting in a small and messy room, applying lipstick. After developing the photo and hanging it up, Chen Lian took off his gloves and stretched his sore neck. This darkroom belongs to a photo studio. It is much larger than Ma Xiaoqing's and can be stretched out. However, Chen Lian has a lot of photos to develop, and his neck is still sore after working with his head down for so long. In the lobby of the photo studio, Bai Qing and Ji Fa sat together, lighting cigarettes and chatting. It wasn't until Chen Lian came out of the darkroom that they turned around and stopped chatting. When Bai Qing saw Chen Lian coming out, he immediately put out the cigarette in his hand. Chen Lian always told her to smoke less so as not to be too blatant. Has it been washed? Ji Fa put the cigarette butt in the ashtray, glanced at the watch with diamonds on her wrist and asked, why did it take so long? There are so many works this time. Well, there are more than 300 pictures in this part. Chen Lian walked over and smelled the faint smell of cigarettes, lit a cigarette and took a deep puff. Bai Qing looked at Chen Lian and asked, so many? Didn't you just finish half of it? This work needs to be put together. You will know when the photos are dry, Chen Lian explained, then turned to the owner of the photo studio and asked, what's the size of the largest photo frame here? The owner of the photo studio was a woman in her 30s, with a perm and curly hair that looked very good looking. After hearing Chen Lian's question, she turned around and said, 40*60, if it's any older, you'll have to go to a painting supply store to buy a picture frame. Chen Lian nodded and said, please give me 4. Okay, wait a moment. The proprietress had a cheerful nature and turned around to get the photo frame. Chen Lian smoked a cigarette and looked at the photos hanging in the photo studio. Most of them were wedding photos or babies with bare buttocks. These days, no one comes to take photos. Most people come to take photos on important days, such as weddings, birthdays, etc. Now that the price of cameras has become cheaper, many people have started to go to the countryside to take pictures with their horses or camels. The most popular thing these days is for a young man to ride on a horse, wear an ill-fitting military uniform and a large military hat, and take an energetic photo. Little girls are often treated much better. They paint their faces red, have bright red lips, and dot their eyebrows with red dots, and finally put on a white or pink gauze skirt. The shooting conditions in the photo studio are better than those of the people who go to the countryside. There are various backgrounds that can be switched and there are more clothes that can be changed. Chen Lian looked at the photos on the wall and admired the skills of the beautiful proprietress. He could see the deep joy in every photo. This is not easy. Most people don't know how to pose for photos, and they are more or less unable to let go in front of the camera. If you want to take good photos, the photographer's guidance is very important, and you must also be able to hold on. Opportunity. At this point, Chen Lian felt that he was doing pretty well. If he had no food to eat in the future, he could open a photo studio. How long will it take for your photos to be ready? Ji Fa was very curious about Chen Lian's work this time and wanted to know what the effect would be if hundreds of photos were combined together. Chen Lian turned his head and estimated the time and said, it will dry in about half an hour. In fact, Chen Lian has some regrets about this work. Today's computers are not advanced enough, otherwise they would be able to arrange and combine more photos at the pixel level. The limitations of the times are nothing more than this. Half an hour later, Chen Lian took out all the developed photos and began to arrange them in order. Bai Qing and the other 3 people stood around and watched Chen Lian put the photos together. They didn't feel anything special at first, but they just thought each photo was beautiful. The proprietress of the photo studio was watching, and at first she thought Chen Lian was being mysterious. Every photo looks ordinary. The people in them don't laugh or cry, and their faces are expressionless and devoid of any emotion. But as more and more photos were combined, the surprise on his face became more and more obvious. Why do ordinary photos combined together form a new photo? A big question mark popped up in the boss's head. She felt that she had not yet mastered photography, which she thought she was proficient in. We are both photographers, why is the gap so big? It is not only the gap in skills, but the gap in creativity and conception is the real gap. Chen Lian, who pasted the photos, looked attentive. Every ordinary photo seemed to be endowed with magic after being integrated into the gray public housing building. When dozens or hundreds of photos were put together, Jifa, who had been silent next to him, finally couldn't help but become excited. His blue eyes seemed to be ignited, and he looked at Chen Lian with a burning gaze. Originally, he thought he had dug up a piece of gold, but now after seeing this photo of Chen Lian, Jifa felt that he had dug up a gem covered by dust. As long as he gently brushed off the dust on it, it would emit a dazzling light and pierce. It makes people unable to open their eyes. From the oil paintings Chen Lian painted for Bai Qing to the works at the film festival, and now adding this unfinished work, Jifa was surprised to find that Chen Lian's thinking and vision were very broad. There will always be something different, not just one thing like other artists. If it was just too many and too complicated, Jifa would just sneer at it, but Chen Lian was different. Every idea he had was novel enough and could be expressed perfectly. Such talent and talent are surprising. The last person to be so powerful was a few centuries ago. Chen Lian. You are simply a genius. Jifa grabbed Chen Lian's arm excitedly, feeling like he had caught a gold mine. Chen Lian glanced at the excited Jifa and knew what she was thinking. She was definitely thinking about how to sell herself for money. No, she was selling her works for money. This idea is really great, an extension of the mosaic and mosaic styles. Bai Qing couldn't help but say, this form breaks through the traditional photography mode, and recombines the gray, white, shades and colors of different photos into a new one. Paintings and photos become brushes and paints in your hands. Chen Lian raised his eyebrows and said, the inspiration is indeed the mosaic and mosaic style. It's just a pity that the developed photos are still too big. If they can be smaller, the pictures can be made more detailed. Bai Qing looked at the new photos and thought for a while, shaking his head and said, I think that would be bad. The combination now is a new picture, but if you look carefully, they will be independent individuals. If it is too detailed, it will be a new picture. The connotation of the work itself is lost. Chen Lian also knew about this problem, but he did not explain to Bai Qing what he meant. What he wanted was to make electronic photos, so that he could zoom in and out at will without affecting each individual photo. Many modern art developments can find their roots a long time ago. For example, the earliest predecessor of mosaic is mosaic. Thousands of years ago, artists used stones and shells to combine to complete a painting. However, with the emergence of oil painting, the mosaic style was once eliminated. Mosaics were too rough and not as delicate as oil paintings. However, in 2 years' time, with the development of the internet and the advent of the era of video games and graphics, mosaics will return to the mainstream. As for the reasons why it has become popular again and entered the public eye, firstly, the resolution of video games is too low, forming a unique pixel style. Another reason is that in the graphics era, pictures can be posted on the internet. Old perverts wanted to post dirty pictures in chat rooms, but they were too exposed and couldn't do it. So when I was young in 1996, a company came up with the idea of mosaic. From then on, mosaic and CC were inseparable. Chen Lian's creativity was common in later generations, but it is still very novel now, a small step ahead. After several photos were stitched together, Chen Lian was about to put them away when the beautiful proprietress next to him couldn't help but asked, well, can I imitate your style? Of course. Chen Lian turned to look at the curly-haired proprietress and said with a smile, this is not an exclusive patent. Anyone can use it. Then can I learn photography from you? The beautiful proprietress asked again, looking at Chen Lian with some hope. Chen Lian was stunned for a moment and said, your technique is very good. You don't need to learn from me. What you lack is inspiration. I can't teach you this. Photography is not difficult. After mastering the basic skills, it depends more on individual talent. Just like painting, Students who graduate from the Academy of Fine Arts can master painting skills proficiently, but the real reason for becoming a master is not your skills. Just like the painter village in Guangzhou later, the entire village was full of imitators. They could skillfully copy the works of the masters, and the excellent ones could even copy them one by one, but they could not become masters. When the beautiful proprietress heard Chen Lian's words, the light in her eyes dimmed a lot. She sighed and said, "I have been doing photography for almost 10 years. I guess you are only in your early 20s. You are right, there are some things that cannot be taught." The depression of the beautiful landlady is a depression shared by most painters and photographers. Everyone wants to be a genius or a master, but without that 1% talent, it will always be insurmountable. Ji Fa deeply felt the disappointment of the beautiful proprietress. She used to want to become a master and an artist, but in the end she could only inherit her family's gallery and become an art dealer. Looking at the pretty face of the beautiful landlady, Ji Fa walked over and hugged her gently and said, "My dear, don't be disappointed, you are already great." The beautiful lady boss was stunned. She couldn't understand what Ji Fa said. Her accent was so strange that people unfamiliar with her couldn't understand it at all. However, she subconsciously responded to Ji Fa. Ji Fa turned around and said to Chen Lian, "Help me translate." Chen Lian looked at the scene and wondered what Ji Fa wanted to do to the boss's wife, and was confused whether he should help the evildoer or not. "Boss," Ji Fa said, "don't be disappointed, you are already great." Bo Qing didn't have so many ideas and took the initiative to translate for Ji Fa. Chen Lian couldn't help but turn his head away. He really couldn't bear to watch the scene, so he put away his photos, took Bai Qing and left, leaving the poor boss lady to face Ji Fa alone. Bai Qing, who was pulled out by Chen Lian, looked at Chen Lian with some confusion and asked, "What's wrong? Why didn't you wait for Ji Fa? Don't you know about Ji Fa?" Chen Lian turned his head and looked at Bo Qing and asked. Bai Qing shook his head in confusion, not understanding what Chen Lian was talking about. The corner of Chen Lian's mouth twitched. He thought Bo Qing knew about it, but he didn't expect that she knew nothing about it, so he explained Ji Fa's glorious deeds in a gossipy way. After hearing this, Bo Qing was stunned. She suddenly remembered that Ji Fa had been overly affectionate to her several times, and even took her to drink and sleep together at night. She didn't take it to heart at first, just thinking that foreigners were more enthusiastic, but now it seems that doesn't seem to be the case. Chen Lian looked at Bo Qing's strange expression and had a bad feeling in his heart. He grabbed her hand and asked, "Ji Fa will not treat you badly?" "No," Bo Qing said quickly, and then he hit Chen Lian with some annoyance and said, "Why didn't you tell me earlier? I thought you knew." "Now I know." Bo Qing murmured in his heart, warning himself in his heart that he would never drink with Ji Fa again. Don't be taken advantage of. Not even girls. This world is too dangerous, and the person who covets you may not be the opposite sex. Chen Lian didn't know what happened to the beautiful landlady and Ji Fa. He only knew that his call to Ji Fa that night didn't get through, and Ji Fa didn't get back to him until the next afternoon. "Did you succeed?" Chen Lian couldn't help but ask curiously. "What are you talking about? I don't understand." "We are just chatting about each other's frustrated lives." Ji Fa pretended not to understand, changed the subject and asked, "Where are you now? I'll go find you." "Got it? Definitely got it?" Chen Lian understood Ji Fa's scumbag quotes as soon as he heard them, and he admired Ji Fa's strength in his heart. This woman is so dangerous. Bai Qing must be more careful in the future. At night, in the bustling Maxim restaurant, Ji Fa was cutting steaks radiantly and chattering about her future plans for Chen Lian and Bai Qing. "Since we have decided to be a double artist, you, Bo Qing, must also participate in this work." Ji Fa forked a piece of beef and put it into his mouth, and then continued, "You can think of it yourself, and wait until this work is completed. Finally, with the addition of the Jiangnan-themed works, I can open an exhibition just for you. Bai Qing frowned and said, but I don't know how to take pictures, so I can't participate. It doesn't matter. You can participate in other forms. If it doesn't work, just name it. Jifa said nonchalantly. But Bai Qing was about to continue talking when Chen Lian took her hand and said, photography is only a part of this work, not the most important. Arrangement and combination are the key. Your understanding of composition and color can help me complete it, the most critical step. Bai Qing pursed his lips and nodded after a while. He was already thinking about how to help Chen Lian complete the other half of his work. When Jifa saw Bai Qing agreeing, she smiled and nodded. She liked Chen Lian's flexibility very much, so she smiled, picked up the cup and said, then I hope we will become famous in Europe next year. Ding! The 3 wine glasses collided together and made a crisp sound, which echoed quietly in the noisy restaurant and would eventually turn into a loud noise in the future. Chen Lian is not in a hurry about creating new works. He doesn't have time to go to Xiangjiang now. It will take a lot of time to complete the Jiangnan-themed paintings. Jifa's plan to hold an exhibition also requires careful planning. Holding an exhibition suddenly will not have much effect. She also needs time to package and market it. A large part of the value of modern art comes from the packaging and marketing of art managers. A painting worth 10,000 yuan may become hundreds or even tens of millions after packaging and marketing. There are many things involved here. Although Jifa is rich in experience, it is impossible to increase the value of Chen Lian and Bai Qing by just opening an exhibition. You also need to find someone to advocate and do the transactions behind the scenes. Networking and capital are both indispensable. Art requires not only talent, but also packaging. Jifa plans to return to Europe after Christmas to make preparations in advance and wait for Chen Lian and Bai Qing to complete their work in February next year. After coming out of Maxim, Jifa waved goodbye to Chen Lian and the others, and looked like he was in a hurry to find the beautiful proprietress. Bai Qing watched the taxi go away and said helplessly, I don't even know how to face Jifa now. Just treat her normally. Jifa didn't do anything extraordinary, Chen Lian said with relief. Jifa is a very shrewd woman. She seems to act unruly but is actually very sensible. Chen Lian and Bai Qing will be Jifa's important partners in the future. She will not act so unwisely, not to mention that Chen Lian is still guarding her. Bai Qing walked beside Chen Lian with his hands behind his back and sighed, I might as well not know. Don't think so much, just pretend you don't know. Oh, I see. With Chen Lian by his side, Bai Qing was actually not that worried. He just refreshed his understanding of Jifa for a while and was a little unaccustomed to it. Chen Lian raised his head and glanced at the dim moon in the night sky, then turned to look at Bai Qing and asked, where do you live now? I'll take you back. Hearing this question, Bai Qing's expression paused, and he couldn't help but exert a little force on Chen Lian's hand. You don't want me to live at your place? Bai Qing looked up at Chen Lian and asked. Chen Lian was silent for a while and said, I'm not used to it. I'm used to being free on my own. Although he had known that he would not be with Chen Lian so smoothly, Bai Qing could not help but feel disappointed. He let go of Chen Lian's hand and said calmly, I know, you are still so cold-blooded. The topic just now caused the atmosphere between the two to become silent. They remained silent until they returned to Chen Lian's house. Bai Qing looked at the clothes he threw on Chen Lian's bed, silently picked them up and prepared to put them into the box. After folding them twice, he couldn't help but throw them on the bed. Chen Lian belongs to your uncle. Bai Qing turned around and looked at Chen Lian and cursed angrily. Just as Chen Lian was about to speak, Bai Qing grabbed him by the collar and pulled him over. He pushed him down on the bed with a hard push with his little hand. Take off your clothes, Bai Qing looked at Chen Lian and ordered, otherwise this matter will not be finished today. Chen Lian opened his mouth, but without saying the last word, he sat up and took off his clothes obediently, showing not only his cold-blooded side, but also his scalding hot body. I will update one chapter of 5000s first, and there will be another chapter to be updated later. Let me tell you, I always update at night. I don't have time to type when I work during the day, so I kept everyone waiting. Sorry. Fringe artists in the entertainment industry. Author, Chizu Xiaomao. Chapter 99. Chapter 99-97. Zhang Quarong's vacation ended early. When it gets dark, the yard becomes lively. Every household has gotten up, going to school and going to work. Children's complaints and parents' urgings are still heard from time to time, as well as the doting blame from the adults. Chen Lian was lying on the bed looking at the ceiling. He was the only one in the room. Bo Qing had already left. Before leaving, he left a deep tooth mark on Chen Lian's wrist. After a long time, Chen Lian sighed quietly, covered himself with a quilt, turned over and continued to pretend to be dead. It wasn't until after 1 o'clock in the afternoon that Chen Lian lifted the quilt and rubbed the red scratches on his back before getting up from the bed. The yard was very quiet in the afternoon. Chen Lian squatted in the yard and brushed his teeth. He looked at the bare ginkgo branches and thought of the one in Chen Miren's yard. I don't know if her business performance is over, and how much money she has made, but no matter how much she earns, she can't compare to her own. Her account has been tripled with Mr. Tang's leverage, and she will be able to earn a few million by the end of the month. Judging from the business environment in mainland China, even the most popular star's price for a commercial performance will never exceed 200,000 yuan. There is no way that Chen Miren can beat her. Chen Lian spit out the toothpaste foam in his mouth, wiped the corners of his mouth and ran into the house, took out his phone and called Zhang Quarong. What? Playing mahjong. As soon as the call was connected, before Chen Lian spoke, Zhang Quarong quickly asked Chen Lian to hurry up and play mahjong. Chen Lian really admired Zhang Quarong's poker addiction, so he hung up the phone helplessly, packed up briefly, and hurried to the appointment. The same people were playing mahjong. Chen Lian asked Zhang Quarong about his account while playing cards. Mr. Tang, have you told me how the situation has been in the past 2 days? Chen Lian asked as he threw out the cards one by one. Zhang Quarong rubbed the cards in his hand and said without raising his head, I don't know if he didn't tell me. Don't worry, nothing will go wrong. After rubbing it carefully for a few times, Zhang Quarong played out the tiles he just grabbed with some disappointment, still muttering mahjong formulas. 80,000. What a fool. Wang Zuxian and Chen Lian pushed down the cards in front of them at the same time, and a card of 80,000 and one shot fired twice. Zhang Quarong was so angry that he pushed the cards in his hand and shouted shamelessly, no more playing. Then you have to pay first. No money. Are you being shameless again? If you do this, I won't play mahjong with you anymore. I won't play cards with you anymore, Wang Zuxian also echoed, saying that he was all in charge. How could he let Zhang Quarong go so easily? Zhang Quarong snorted sadly and indignantly, and could only pay honestly. Gong Li watched from the side and couldn't help but want to laugh. She really couldn't understand why Zhang Quarong was so addicted to poker when his poker skills were so bad. Gong Li, you can still laugh, how about you lose money too? Zhang Quarong said angrily. Chen Lian put the money away and interjected, I don't want to cheat. Zhang Quarong, it's boring. I will definitely not play mahjong tomorrow. What can he do if he doesn't play mahjong? Chen Lian couldn't resist the restless Wang Zuxian, so he could only take her to fulfill her wish to climb the Great Wall. Winter is not a good time to climb the Great Wall. Even if the sun is shining brightly, the cold wind will blow on you and you will feel very cold. Chen Lian held Wang Zuxian's hand, stopped when he saw her panting, and said, let's take a rest. We should come here in spring or autumn. That's right, I'm hot and cold now, and I'm almost exhausted. Zhang Quarong, who was following behind, leaned weakly against the city wall, regretting his actions of joining in the fun today. How nice to sleep comfortably at home. Wang Zuxian's little face turned red and she gasped slightly, I don't know when I will come next time. I must climb up today. Okay, let's continue. After a short rest, Chen Lian was in good physical condition and did not feel very tired. After resting for a few minutes, Wang Zuxian regained a lot of strength, looked at the high platform in front of her and shouted, let's go. After saying that, he crossed the steps with his long legs and continued to climb up. Chen Lian looked back at Zhang Guorong and asked, is that okay? If not, just wait here. Who can't say it? Zhang Guorong stood up immediately and ran after him. There were not many people on the Great Wall in winter, only a few foreign tourists. Wang Zuxian and Zhang Guorong did not put on any disguises. They were recognized several times on the road and took several photos together. Chen Lian, a fringe person in the entertainment industry, was naturally not known to anyone. He was treated as an assistant by tourists and was promoted as a photographer. After taking photos for them, he also left the tourists' addresses and told them to have them washed and mailed to them. I can't tell, you are quite considerate. Zhang Guorong looked at Chen Lian, who wrote down the address, and teased. Chen Lian pouted and said, who asked me to be your assistant? I can't embarrass you. She's my assistant. Wang Zuxian held Chen Lian's hand and emphasized. What's yours? I won't rob it from you. Zhang Guorong was particularly disgusted, but he still added venomously, but there are still several people robbing it from you. Brother, Wang Zuxian was so angry that her tooth ached. She stamped her foot and was about to hit Zhang Guorong. Zhang Guorong immediately screamed strangely and ran away. The two of them were playing around on the Great Wall like children, and they were moving much faster. Half an hour later, at the highest point of the Badaling Great Wall, Wang Zuxian stood on the platform and looked at the mountains and rivers in the distance. She felt that all the emotions in her heart were released. She couldn't help but shout loudly at the mountains in the distance, ah! Looking at Wang Zuxian, who was shouting with open arms, Zhang Guorong leaned against the wall and panted but couldn't help shouting. Chen Lian stood nearby and took a photo of this scene. Although climbing the Great Wall was tiring, the sense of accomplishment after climbing up was still greater than the fatigue. Wang Zuxian shouted for a while, held her hands on the wall and took a breath. She looked back at Chen Lian, smiled brightly, and made a scissor hand gesture. Click. Chen Lian immediately raised his camera and took a picture. After knowing her for so many days, this was the first time he saw her smiling so happily. Her lively and youthful look was very contagious. Zhang Guorong leaned against the wall, looking at Wang Zuxian with a bright smile, and couldn't help but smile. He originally had some objections to Chen Lian's restless hookup, but now they disappeared. The most important thing in life is to be happy. Since Wang Zuxian and Chen Lian are happy together, why should they care so much? Everyone has their own life. No one is the savior and cannot save everyone. Zhang Guorong didn't want to be the savior, but Chen Lian always thought about whether he could be the savior for once. You should be nicer to Xiu Xian in the future and don't make her sad again. Zhang Guorong stood next to Chen Lian and looked into the distance, with wisps of green smoke floating from the cigarette on his finger. Chen Lian turned his head and glanced at Wang Zuxian, who was chatting with fans in the distance, then nodded and said, I try my best, but it's not me. I know, you don't need to explain. Leslie Chung interrupted Chen Lian, smoking a cigarette, and said, although you are not a good man, you are still magnanimous and will not promise anything, so don't give others hope and end up hurting them. Other people. Chen Lian was silent for a while, not knowing what to say. He only felt a sting on his wrist, and the tooth mark left by Bai Qing had not gone away. Sometimes many things are beyond his control. After the three of them came down from the Great Wall in the afternoon, they were all too tired to talk. On the way back in the car, Wang Zuxian leaned on Chen Lian's shoulder and fell asleep from exhaustion. Zhang Guorong, who was sitting in the front row, looked back and said, I'm going back to Xiangjiang. Xiao Xian should go back with me. Chen Lian asked in confusion, why do you want to go back suddenly? Didn't Mr. Tang say he would come before Christmas? The company has temporary work, and the holiday has to end early, Zhang Guorong said helplessly. During this time, I played with Zhang Guorong and the others every day. Chen Lian was not used to being separated suddenly, so he asked, when are you leaving? The flight is the day after tomorrow, Zhang Guorong replied with a smile, I will help you look after your account when you get back. Chen Lian shook his head and said, that's not important. I'll give it to you the day after tomorrow. No need, it's not like he disappeared, Zhang Guorong said nonchalantly, then glanced at Wang Zuxian who was sleeping and said, let's spend time with Zuxian tomorrow. Chen Lian nodded, turned to look at Wang Zuxian's slightly moving eyelids, raised his hand and stroked her head to make her sleep more comfortably. In the alley of Haoerhe, Chen Lian was holding a pile of half-eaten snacks in his hand, including a candied Haus with only one bite, pink marshmallows with half remaining, and a cute candy man with one corner missing. Wang Zuxian wanted to buy everything she saw and try it, but she only tasted it for a moment before leaving it to Chen Lian. Why don't you eat? Do you think I bought too much? Wang Zuxian asked, holding Chen Lian's arm. I don't like sweets. Chen Lian looked helplessly at the pile of sweets in his hand, but he still bit into a candied Haus. Don't waste food. Wang Zuxian squinted her eyes and watched Chen Lian frowning while eating. She couldn't help but buy a lot of things, just to see whether Chen Lian was reluctant or willing to tolerate her. I'm leaving tomorrow, will you miss me? As evening approached, Wang Zuxian looked at Chen Lian and asked suddenly. Chen Lian looked at the sugar stain on the corner of Wang Zuxian's mouth, raised his hand and wiped it gently and said, yes, I will visit you next year. When? Wang Zuxian's eyes immediately lit up. After the new year, I won't stay for too long. Then you should accompany me well when you go, and you are not allowed to play mahjong with your brother. Okay, but I'm afraid he'll act like a spoiled brat again. Ignore him. The two of them walked in the alley, and the setting sun stretched their shadows long and closely together, and they did not separate until nightfall. Early the next morning, Chen Lian was sitting at the breakfast stall eating fried dough sticks. He raised his head and glanced at the long white mark left by the flying plane in the blue sky, then lowered his head and continued eating his breakfast. This is the normal state of life, and the white mark in the sky will slowly dissipate over time. In the National Art Museum of China, Chen Lian received a notice from the National Art Exhibition jury after several days, asking him to come and hear the results of the selection for the Venice Biennale. Regarding the selection results of the jury, Chen Lian did not have too many expectations. He had not done any networking in the past few days, so the possibility of being selected was extremely slim. The Venice Biennale is the most valuable exhibition among the three major exhibitions in the art world. I don't know how many people want to participate. If Chen Lian doesn't seek connections, others will. Don't think that artists are indifferent to fame and wealth. We are all human beings, how can we not have emotions and desires? Chen Lian sat opposite Yang Lizhu, director of the Old Acquaintance Art Museum, and asked curiously, didn't you participate in the selection? It's boring, you seem to be confident. Yang Lizhu said a word without explaining what was boring, but he was very curious about Chen Lian's indifference, guessing whether he knew the result in advance. Chen Lian shook his head and said, it's not that I'm confident, it's that I know that I have no hope. Yang Lizhu looked into Chen Lian's eyes, and after a while he said a few words of encouragement, you are only 20 years old. It is good to maintain this kind of purity, but you must maintain it in the future. Fame and wealth are important, but don't lose your heart. That's the most important thing. Chen Lian nodded. He had a good impression of Yang Lizhu. When he was approached by the film festival, he just accepted Chen Lian's work after seeing it, and even helped with the formalities. However, Chen Lian still asked Chen Lian for the money that should be spent. Yang Lizhu was a person who could distinguish between public and private matters. Have you had any new creative ideas recently? Your last work was really good and more meaningful than your oil painting this time. Yang Lizhu glanced at the people who hadn't arrived yet and continued chatting with Chen Lian. Chen Lian smoked a Zhongnanhai and handed it over and said, "Yes, I'm working on it." "Well, that's good. A strong desire to create is the most important thing." Yang Lizhu took the cigarette and said mockingly, "When you get to my age, you will know how difficult it is to make a good work. Many people come to this at this age, the only thing left is to seek fame and reputation." Chen Lian lit a cigarette and didn't reply. This kind of thing was normal. Chen Lian couldn't guarantee whether he would become a stubborn old man who rested on his laurels when he got old. After the two chatted for a while, the judges came over in a hurry. Yang Lizhu turned to Chen Lian and said, "Do you want to know the result?" Chen Lian was stunned for a moment and asked, "Do you know?" "Of course I do, this is my place." "Then why didn't you say anything just now?" "Forgot to talk." After Chen Lian waited for a while, the judges who listened to the rambling speech couldn't help but turn their heads and looked at Yang Lizhu and asked, "You'd better tell me first. These people speak too slowly. If I'm not chosen, I'll go first withdrawn." "Haha, you are still young and can't hold your breath." Yang Lizhu smiled, and then whispered, "Originally, you were not included, but your name was added when the list was handed in." Chen Lian frowned and asked uncertainly, "Did you help me?" "It has nothing to do with me. I didn't participate in the selection, so I have nothing to say." After Yang Lizhu explained, he said with emotion, "If I hadn't known that you had no background, I would have doubted whether you came from some compound." Chen Lian said speechlessly, "What big boy can't hold a film festival?" Yang Lizhu laughed, patted Chen Lian on the shoulder and said, "No matter what, it's a good thing to be chosen." Chen Lian nodded, but he was thinking about why his name was added. The status of someone who could intervene in such a matter must be high. He was a poor boy from a large courtyard, but he didn't know any big shots. After thinking about it for a long time, I could only think that someone admired me. Well, as long as this explained it, maybe my film festival was in line with the leaders above who wanted to rectify the healthcare product industry, and it was remembered by others. Regarding Chen Lian's speculation, Yang Lizhu also quite agreed with it and felt that this possibility was relatively high. The above may want to use Chen Lian as a model for artists who are not troublemaking, not crazy, but also care about society. Chen Lian is always much better than the people in East Village and Old Summer Palace. Chen Lian, who knew the result in advance, had no intention of continuing to listen to those clichés. He stood in the corner chatting with Yang Lizhu. It was not until his name was finally called that he went up and said a few words. More than half an hour later, Chen Lian came out of the National Art Museum of China. Seeing that it was getting late, he turned back to Xinjia Yikao. Mr. Zhou called him several times to make appointments, but Chen Lian didn't have time. Now that he was free, he had to go and see him. In a bar in Xinjia Yikao, Chen Lian ordered a glass of beer, sat down and watched Mr. Zhou singing on the stage, and couldn't help but hum along. Mr. Zhou, whose voice has not yet become smoky, still sings very well and is very energetic on stage. Although he is small, he is very explosive. Chen Lian listened for a while, then called the waiter and brought a flower basket. 100 yuan for a small flower basket is quite expensive. I wonder how much Mr. Zhou can get. Mr. Zhou on the stage received the flower basket and saw Chen Lian at the prompt of the waiter. She immediately stood up and waved to him. If there were not 2 songs to come, she would probably run down. After singing 2 more songs, Mr. Zhou immediately put down the microphone and ran down. When he ran up to Chen Lian, he put his arms around his neck and said happily, "You finally came to see me." "Sorry, I've been too busy recently." Chen Lian put his arm around Mr. Zhou's waist and said apologetically. Mr. Zhou looked into Chen Lian's eyes, shook his head and said, I know you are busy, it will be fine. I thought you would be angry. Chen Lian pinched Mr. Zhou's chin and asked, are you going to go on stage again? Mr. Zhou understood what Chen Lian meant and immediately said, there are no more songs of mine in the future. Please wait while I go and talk to the boss. Well, go ahead, I'll wait for you here. I'll be back soon. Mr. Zhou let go of Chen Lian and ran quickly towards the backstage. Seeing Mr. Zhou's bouncing back, Chen Lian glanced around the messy environment and couldn't help but frown. It's no big deal for a naturally good actor to sing in a bar. He has to find a way to help her. After a while, Mr. Zhou ran back quickly, hugged Chen Lian's arm and said happily, come on, I'll treat you to a supper with the money you just sent from the flower basket. Borrow flowers to offer to Buddha. Chen Lian smiled and scratched Mr. Zhou's small nose, and then asked, do you like singing or acting? Mr. Zhou did not expect that Chen Lian would suddenly ask this question. He thought for a moment and said, I like acting, but no crew is willing to hire me. If you like acting, then don't come to singing anymore. You'll never have a chance here. But I want to make money, how about you support me? Mr. Zhou said, turning his head and looking at Chen Lian, hoping to hear those three words. Chen Lian felt like he was being forced into a corner. Damn it! Why did the topic suddenly go off the rails? 10,000 words updated. It's a little late, don't mind. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fringe artists in the entertainment industry. Author, Chizu de Xiaomao. Chapter 100. Chapter 198. Be rigorous in doing things. In the dark night, the street lights on the street seemed to be broken, with only a few scattered lights still on. Under the broken street lamp, Chen Lian and Mr. Zhou stood face to face, without even a shadow. The rich night made it difficult for the two to see each other's expressions. Mr. Zhou's question just now is still ringing in Chen Lian's ears, raise her? It's not that there is no money, it's just that the word support can't be used between friends. I have no money. Chen Lian patted Mr. Zhou's little head, then turned his head and looked at the pink-red bar sign and said calmly, singing in the bar has no future, and you don't plan to be a singer. I'll look back later. Let me help you find out if there is any shortage of people in the crew. Mr. Zhou knew that Chen Lian would not answer his question directly, and he felt a little depressed in his heart, and he said glumly, let's go shopping with me. Chen Lian took Mr. Zhou's hand and said. Mr. Zhou's little hand was grabbed by Chen Lian, and the warmth in his palm made her unable to blame her. What can you do if you choose your own life? Just accept your fate. Open-mindedness is an obvious characteristic of Mr. Zhou. Another is his free nature. He never lets himself be depressed. After taking 2 steps with Chen Lian, she forgot about what just happened. She snuggled close to Chen Lian and asked him in a low voice what he was busy with during this time. After a while, Mr. Zhou heard what Chen Lian said and said with a sense of disappointment, I feel like your life is so exciting. So many things have happened in such a short period of time. Compared with Chen Lian's life, Mr. Zhou felt that his life during this period had not changed at all. He went to find the crew during the day and sang at night. It was simple, boring, and unchanged. Most people's lives are like this. They don't feel it on ordinary days, but after seeing the colorful lives of others, they feel as if their life has been in vain. This is how Mr. Zhou feels now. His life is like a glass of cold water, neither hot nor tasteless. You can see the bottom of it at a glance. Singing in a bar seemed really boring. Mr. Zhou sighed inwardly, turned to look at Chen Lian and said, I won't be singing tomorrow. I'm going to find a few more crews to try. Chen Lian nodded when he heard this and then frowned and said, it's useless to try blindly on your own. Even if you find some small roles, it won't be of much help to you. Just wait for me for a few days and I will help you find out. Don't you know anyone? Mr. Joe knew that Chen Lian had just entered the circle, so he had no connections or resources. Chen Lian smiled and said, "Don't worry about it, I will definitely find it for you. At least we still know a few people." Mr. Joe didn't ask Chen Lian how to find it for him. He was afraid that the answer was not what he wanted to hear, so he lowered his head depressedly, thinking that he would have to fight for it in the future and not let Chen Lian worry about him. Especially in the sacrifice yourself way. What's the difference between this and wearing a hat? The more he thought about it, the more uncomfortable Mr. Joe felt. He pulled Chen Lian to stop and said, "Don't look for it for me. I will find a way myself." Chen Lian looked at the suddenly stubborn Mr. Joe and vaguely guessed what she was thinking. After being silent for a while, he said, "Okay, you can go out and try more by yourself, but you'd better not go to the bar." "I understand." Mr. Joe smiled and said, then he held Chen Lian's arm and raised his head and said, "Then I have no money to live, do you want to support me? Don't say it's so ugly. Help each other, do you understand?" After Chen Lian settled on the nature of the matter, he touched Josu's head and said, "If I don't have any money in the future, why don't you help me again?" "It's not to help, it's to support," Mr. Joe said persistently, and then looked at Chen Lian with a smile and said, "In the future, if you have no money, I will support you. I will definitely raise you until you are fat and white. You think I'm a pig? I don't care, I will support you from now on." "Okay, okay, I'll wait for you to support me." Under the flickering street lights, two people, one big and one small, walked in the winter night, like two people with nowhere to go, clinging to each other. The next morning, Chen Lian woke up in Mr. Joe's rental house and had time to look at the room carefully. The house is not very big, only about 60 square meters, and the furniture is not very complete. The wardrobe door is broken. Only the heat from the stove is sufficient. Chen Lian looked at this environment and couldn't help but frown. Although his living conditions were not very good, they were much better than Mr. Joe. Looking at Mr. Joe, who was still sleeping soundly, Chen Lian quietly got dressed and went out. These days, housing agencies are not yet established, so it is very troublesome to rent a house. Chen Lian can only call his friends who used to walk around and have no real jobs, and ask them to help them find out where there are better houses for rent. This group of young men moved very quickly, mainly because they had been repaired by Chen Lian before, and when they knew that Chen Lian was looking for a house, they immediately went out to help sweep the streets. The call came back in more than an hour. Chen Lian, who was having breakfast with Mr. Joe, took out his phone and glanced at the caller ID on it. So he got through directly and asked, "Hey, did you find it so quickly?" In a canteen in the north of the city, a man in his 20s sniffed and said to the phone, "Brotherin, I found it. I guarantee it meets your requirements." Chen Lian listened to the trembling voice on the phone and thanked him, "Thank you for your hard work in such a cold weather. I will treat you to dinner another day. Please tell me the address and I will go and check it out later." "Hey, it's not hard work." The man smiled, knowing that Chen Lian was a generous person, and immediately gave Chen Lian the address he had just copied, and said a few more polite words before hanging up the phone. Chen Lian wrote down the address and put the phone away, then looked at Mr. Joe's curious eyes and said, "I found a house for you. It's too remote for you to live here, and the conditions are not good." Mr. Joe, who was drinking porridge, licked his lips after hearing this. His eyes were no longer smiling, and he muttered in a low voice, "You don't want to keep me, you dog man." "Chen Lian, can you please stop saying what's on your mind?" "That's right." Mr. Joe took a bite of the fried dough sticks, looked at Chen Lian's speechless look, and said arrogantly, "You just have a tough mouth. I'm too lazy to tell you. You can think whatever you want." Chen Lian wouldn't admit it. "We are all friends and we can't support each other. The house my friend helped me find is in a new community. It is an employee community built by a state-owned enterprise with funds raised. The environment of the community is very good, and the decoration of the house is also very good. It has a layout of 2 bedrooms and 1 living room, fully furnished, and looks like a wedding room. The landlord was an aunt in her 50s. She was quite satisfied with Chen Lian and Mr. Zhou, who both looked good in appearance and temperament. She was especially satisfied with Chen Lian's authentic Beijing dialect, so she asked, "Just you two can live here? Do you have any kid?" Just as Chen Lian was about to explain, Mr. Zhou quickly replied, "Yes, but I don't have any children." After Mr. Zhou finished speaking, he glared at Chen Lian, who was about to speak. Then he took the landlady's hand and asked, "Auntie, how much does this house cost per month? We have just started working and don't have much income. Can it be cheaper?" The landlady looked at Chen Lian and Mr. Zhou, hesitated and said, "Okay, I'll give you 30 yuan cheaper, 330 yuan a month." The price of 330 is not expensive. Renting a single room in a large courtyard in the 3rd Ring Road costs more than 100 a month. However, 330 is not cheap either. The average salary in Beijing is less than 700 a month. Most people would not rent a house in Sanbazin, but Chen Lian didn't care about the price of Sanbazin. The house was very good and the location was satisfactory. The price was quite cheap. Chen Lian looked at Mr. Zhou, who was still trying to bargain, pulled her and said to the landlady, "No problem, just 303, I'll pay half a year in advance." Hearing that Chen Lian agreed so readily, Mr. Zhou pursed his lips and wanted to haggle more. However, in front of outsiders, she still respected Chen Lian and did not interrupt. She watched Chen Lian give out more than 1,000 yuan at once. After paying the money and signing a simple contract, the house is considered rented. After the landlord made a lot of explanations and left, Mr. Zhou finally couldn't help but feel happy and jumped on Chen Lian like a sloth. So happy, Mr. Zhou hugged Chen Lian's neck and said happily, "I feel like I'm married." Chen Lian looked at Mr. Zhou's happy look and didn't say anything inappropriate. He just looked at her with a smile and said, "As long as you are happy, I will buy one myself when I have money." Mr. Zhou tilted his head and calculated, and then said, "The current house price is more than 3,000. If you want to buy such a big house, you will probably have to save money for a long time. When you become famous, you will make money by filming 2 movies." After Chen Lian finished speaking, he looked at the excited Mr. Zhou and said, "If you like it, you can buy it now." "I have no money," young Master Zhou said, shrinking his neck. Then his eyes suddenly lit up. He looked at Chen Lian and asked, "Do you want to buy it for me? You also said you don't want to support me." This topic couldn't be dealt with, and Chen Lian didn't even bother to explain to Mr. Zhou, "Just think what you want, what's wrong with giving a house to a good friend, why don't you come over and stay if you're fine?" However, Chen Lian does not have the financial ability now. He will have to wait until Mr. Tang transfers the money in his account to him next month. Mr. Zhou looked at Chen Lian, who was silent, and rolled his beautiful eyes. He stopped continuing the topic and jumped down from him and said, "Let's go shopping and decorate this place. The new house is fully furnished and has nothing else. There are quite a lot of things that need to be purchased." In the shopping mall, Mr. Zhou held Chen Lian's hand and asked about everything he saw. "Do you like this vase? You can put it in the living room. This bowl is beautiful. Do you like it? Why don't you choose red sheets? Or buy a few more as spares? You always mess with me." Listening to the sarcastic words Mr. Zhou was about to blurt out, Chen Lian quickly covered her mouth. This was a shopping mall with many people coming and going. How could she be so stupid and bold? At the end of the shopping mall, Chen Lian was in a daze. Who was renting this house to? No matter how you decorate it, it's all in the style you like. Mr. Zhou was very happy and didn't care how it was decorated. He just simply thought that this was the home where he and Chen Lian would live together in the future, even if Chen Lian wouldn't come here often. The house is decorated the way he likes it, and he will come here often in the future. Mr. Zhou's excitement made Chen Lian feel heavy, and there was always an inexplicable anger welling up in him, which made him feel a little guilty. It's not easy to be a good friend. From time to time, you will always want to go further. This kind of thinking is unacceptable. After the new house was decorated, Mr. Zhou clapped his hands with satisfaction, looked at the newly put sheets, turned to Chen Lian and asked, "Would you like to try the new bed?" "Well, I want to give it a try. I don't know if the sheets will dry quickly if they are stained with water." Chen Lian nodded and said seriously. "Then it depends on you." Mr. Zhou hugged Chen Lian's waist and said with a blushing face, "I want to change the sheets tomorrow. I have bought several sets and I want to try them all." Chen Lian agreed very much with Mr. Zhou's rigorous character. He had to try everything, otherwise how would he know whether the quality of the things he bought was good or not? Testing the quality of sheets is not a simple matter. You have to test whether it is soft and elastic. Each step takes a lot of time. Chen Lian, who hadn't been home for a few days, didn't even heat up the pot of water when he got home, when he received a call from Gong Li. "Where are you? Do you have time today?" Gong Li asked on the phone while putting on makeup at her home. Chen Lian sat lazily next to the stove and asked without interest, "What's the matter?" "If it's not important, I don't have time." "What have you been doing these past few days?" Gong Li couldn't help but ask after hearing Chen Lian's lazy voice. "Why is the voice so weak?" "Virtual." Chen Lian felt that he was insulted, and immediately sat up from his chair and asked, "Where are you? I'll show you what it means to be powerful and powerful." Gong Li, who was wearing lipstick, laughed immediately and said in a charming voice, "Okay, then come to the Beijing theater and watch the show with me." "Watching a show?" Chen Lian immediately lost interest, lay back lazily and said, "I'm not interested, I don't want to go." "Hey, it turns out it's really false." "Forget it, I'll go by myself," Gong Li said deliberately. "I can't bear it." Chen Lian immediately said, "What time?" "Meet you in front of the theater at 7:30. Gong Li hung up the phone after saying that, not giving Chen Lian a chance to regret it. Gong Li looked at herself with exquisite makeup in the mirror, couldn't help but raise her eyebrows, and then took her bag and went out. After Chen Lian hung up the phone, he looked at the time. It was almost 6 o'clock now. It was about the same time. He sat up from his chair, packed up briefly and took a taxi to the Beijing theater. "I don't know what kind of performance it is or whether it's good or not." In the taxi, Chen Lian, who was listening to the driver's talk, reminded each other of the performance of the elder brother who took the taxi last time. "It seems that a song and dance troupe from the south is performing, but today is only the 28th. Why is it so early? Or is it a different dance troupe that performs for 3 days? If it was to watch dancing, Chen Lian would still be very interested. The Beijing Theater is located next to the Anhui Bridge in the Asian Games Village. It is the largest theater in Beijing and has hosted many performances." More than 20 minutes later, Chen Lian got off the car at the entrance of the Beijing Theater and felt a headache as he looked at the crowds of people queuing up outside to check in for tickets. It's popular to watch girls dancing. Almost all the people who come here are young men. Just when Chen Lian was in a daze, Gong Li came over wearing a hat and mask and patted him on the shoulder. "Why are you dazed?" Chen Lian turned to look at Gong Li and said, "Isn't it waiting for you? Why did you think of coming to the show?" "My friend gave me 2 tickets, so I came to take a look if I had nothing to do," Gong Li said, holding Chen Lian's arm, and then looked at his less obvious dark circles and asked, "What have you been doing these days?" "Dark circles appeared under my eyes." "It's okay, I just didn't sleep well." Chen Lian glanced at the people still queuing up, changed the topic and said, "Let's go queue up, there are quite a lot of people." Gong Li looked at Chen Lian suspiciously. If she hadn't known that Wang Zuxian had left and Chen Myron was also running a business performance out of town, she would have doubted that he was going to hang out with them and that Mr. Zhou had been forgotten. "Are you with Master Zhou these days?" Gong Li asked, pretending not to care. Chen Lian frowned, and then said frankly, "Well, I'll help her move." "I knew it." Gong Li pinched Chen Lian angrily, but she wasn't angry. He wasn't her man anyway, so why not treat him like a cat in heat? "What's the show tonight? Why are there so many people?" Chen Lian looked at the growing audience and turned to ask. Gong Li took out the ticket, took a look at it and said, "Chu Yun, the award-winning work of Wuhan Song and Dance Troupe. I've never heard of it, but it should be pretty awesome to win an award." Chen Lian shook his head, then took a look at the ticket and found that it was a VIP ticket. He immediately said speechlessly, "Why do you have to queue up for a VIP ticket? Isn't this talking to you?" After entering the theater, the two found their own seats in the private room and sat down. Chen Lian looked at the prologue on the huge stage below that had not yet begun, and suddenly remembered that he had performed several plays here in his previous life, all of which were classic plays. It's just that at that time, many classic dramas were not as popular as they are now, and tickets were half sold and half given away. "I wonder when I will have the opportunity to perform a play here," Chen Lian suddenly said with some nostalgia. Gong Li turned her head in surprise, looked at Chen Lian and said, "You seem to have acted before. Drama is different from film and television performances. If you really want to act, take the Chinese test in the future." "Take the Chinese test?" Chen Lian doesn't want to take the exam, he hates the establishment. Soon the performance hall became quiet. The lights were turned off and the host came up and briefly mentioned the precautions about not making any noise during the performance before leaving. The curtain on the stage slowly opened, huge lights shone in the middle of the stage, beautiful music slowly sounded, and a graceful and dancing figure appeared in the center of the stage. Chen Lian looked at that figure, sat up straight and began to appreciate it seriously. "I encountered an emergency today and lost time. I can only update 5,000 words first. I will add 5,000 words later, and 10,000 words per day in the next few days. I still owe 20 chapters, and I will try to pay them off within 20 days. I'm sorry, gentlemen." Fringe artists in the entertainment industry. Author, Chizu de Xiaomao. Chapter 101. Chapter 101-99. There is a beautiful woman on the side of the water. On the beautifully decorated stage, the lights flashed like water, and the graceful figures of the dancers danced to the beautiful music. The actors' dancing postures are beautiful, with the gorgeous atmosphere of court dance and the unique elegant and gentle beauty of Chu dance. Gong Li looked at the performance on the stage and couldn't help but said, "You dance so well. No wonder I won the award last year." "Won an award last year? Why did you come to Beijing to perform this year?" Chen Lian asked doubtfully. He thought it was this year's award-winning work. Gong Li shook her head and said, "I didn't know. Look good and don't talk." "Chen Lian, didn't you speak first?" The frustrated Chen Lian turned his head and continued to watch the performance. The dance was indeed very good, smart, and elegant, but with a sense of dignity and grandeur. The actor perfectly displayed the melancholy of Ms. Yang's yearning, sadness, and longing for not seeing her again. Thinking of this, Chen Lian picked up the playlist and wanted to see who danced this section. Ms. Chu Yongxiang, performer Lu Xiaoli. Chen Lian looked at the name above with a strange expression. After a long time, it turned out to be this person. No wonder she is so good-looking and can dance well. Gong Li turned her head and looked at Chen Lian, who was not watching the performance seriously. She couldn't help but hit him and asked, "You don't like watching dance dramas?" "No, Ms. Yang's unit is pretty good." Chen Lian shook his head and said, "I just suddenly thought of the sentence at the beginning of Ms. Yang." Gong Li suddenly became curious and asked in a low voice, "Which sentence can you still recite, Chu Ci?" The emperor descended to Bazoo, his eyes were dim and worried. Chen Lian recited it in a low voice, and then said angrily to Gong Li, "Is it strange to be able to recite the songs of Chu? I can also recite the book of songs. I usually read more books when I have nothing to do." Gong Li, you are noble. You are amazing. You look down on me because you can recite Chu Ci, right? A little angry, Gong Li turned her head and ignored Chen Lian. She could tell her sense of superiority even after watching the performance. What a bitch. What a great talent. Chen Lian didn't care about Gong Li's reaction. He really didn't think about dressing up. He just happened to remember that he had acted in the play Chu Yuan in his previous life and had studied Chu Yuan's lyrics. Mrs. Yang was written by Chu Yuan. The description of love is both sad and innocent. Gong Li was still a little unhappy on the side, flipping through the play introduction sheet in her hand, and then she saw the song Mrs. Yang on the back, and she suddenly felt a little funny. What? You saw it just now, and you said you can recite it. Gong Li thought of Chen Lian just looking through the playlist, and naturally thought that he was deliberately pretending to be knowledgeable in front of her, and couldn't help but muttered, "The little man is pretty good. Cute." The cute little man who knows how to put on a show, looked at Lu Xiaoli on the stage and couldn't help but marvel at her beauty. She has red lips, white teeth, and a beautiful girl, straight blue eyebrows, and beautiful eyes. The meat is rich and the bones are light, so it is suitable for entertaining. The waist is small and the neck is beautiful, just like a fresh and humble bird. Tisk tisk, you really know how to pretend, Chen Lian complained to himself in his heart, but just saying good looking cannot describe the stunning beauty. Especially when the water sleeves were thrown up, the feeling of amazement was particularly strong. Chen Lian leaned on the back of the chair and watched Lu Xiaoli throw up the aqua blue water sleeves high and then catch them lightly, truly admiring her dancing skills. It is worthy of an award-winning work. After the performance of just 10 minutes, Chen Lian couldn't help but applaud with other audiences. "Do you think this dance is good?" Gong Li asked, clapping her hands. Chu Yun has a total of 9 units and 9 Chu Ci, and Mrs. Yang is just one of them. Chen Lian did not applaud so seriously in the previous units. Chen Lian stopped clapping, nodded seriously and said, "That sleeve is amazing." Gong Li nodded in agreement and said, "It's true. That actor, your sleeves are probably 4 to 5 meters wide. You can't do it if you don't have a solid foundation. By the way, do you want to send a flower basket?" Gong Li suddenly looked into Chen Lian's eyes and asked. Huh? Chen Lian was stunned for a moment by Gong Li's sudden question, then shook his head and said, "It's not like I'm sending flowers from an acquaintance." Gong Li raised a smile on her lips, looked at Chen Lian playfully and said, "Don't we know each other after we give it away? Don't you admire her sleeves very much? Did you learn this yin and yang attitude from your brother?" Chen Lian rolled his eyes at Gong Li, feeling that his good sister was infected after playing mahjong with Zhang Guorong twice. "You're just kidding, but you're serious." Gong Li's eyes wandered, she picked up the cup on the table with a smile and took a sip of tea, then turned her head and continued to look at the next unit. Chen Lian actually picked up the cup and took a sip, continuing to admire the last unit. 10 minutes later, after the last unit of National Memorial Day ended, the entire Chu Yun dance drama came to an end. The lights in the theater came on, and the actors on the stage all came on stage to express their thanks. Chen Lian and all the audience stood up and applauded, expressing the audience's gratitude and encouragement to the actors. The audience in the audience was also scattered, and many people ran from the auditorium to the stage to present flowers. Most of the actors received flowers. Gong Li touched Chen Lian with her arm and said, "You really don't want to send me a flower? You can turn it into a flower and I'll give it to you." Chen Lian said angrily, "It's boring, let's go. I'm hungry even if I haven't eaten at night. Why are you in a hurry? Come with me to the backstage to say hello to your friends." Gong Li shook the ticket in her hand and said, "They gave me tickets, so I have to say thank you when I come." Favors are inevitable, Chen Lian nodded and followed Gong Li to the backstage. At this time, there was a lot of people coming and going backstage. The actors who had finished their performances were chatting with friends who were taking off their makeup or holding flowers and cheering. It was very lively. Gong Li and Chen Lian shuttled through the corridors and headed towards the theater office area. However, Gong Li didn't see her friend in the office. There was only an older sister eating melon seeds boredly. When Gong Li asked, she found out that her friend was busy delivering the leader of the performance. About to run back again, Chen Lian was too lazy to move and said to Gong Li, "Go ahead, I won't pass." Gong Li saw Chen Lian's lack of interest and didn't force him to wait here. She said hello and came back. Watching Gong Li leave, Chen Lian stood at the door of the theater office, glanced at the white wall, and then took out a cigarette and lit it. The dressing room backstage is too noisy, which always reminds Chen Lian of his previous life when he was acting in plays, and he will inevitably miss his past life. I'm afraid it won't be easy to change the order of appearances tomorrow. The playlist has been decided. A man at the end of the corridor followed a woman with a helpless expression, speaking Wuhan dialect, which was quite interesting to hear. Chen Lian turned his head and glanced, and recognized Mrs. Yang, who was with the man at a glance. He leaned against the wall and watched them with interest. Mrs. Yang's expression was not very good either. She looked at the group leader and said, "Captain, I really can't help it. I have to go back tomorrow night and move Mrs. Yang to the first performance." The group leader sighed and said helplessly, "Okay, I also know the situation at your home. I'll go and ask." Chen Lian heard their conversation and probably understood, but he didn't think that a member of a local song and dance troupe could allow the Beijing theater to change the order of the plays. The tickets have been sold and the playlist has been prepared. The most important thing is that one performance has already been performed today. How is it possible to change the order? The song and dance leader and Lu Xiaoli walked toward the office. Chen Lian stood in the corridor outside the door smoking a cigarette. He took a clear look at Lu Xiaoli, who still had makeup on her face. She looked really good looking. When the song and dance leader saw Chen Lian standing at the door of the door office, he thought he was a staff member of the theater, so he came over and asked, "Is your manager here?" Lu Xiaoli also turned her attention to Chen Lian, and was slightly startled when she saw Chen Lian's appearance. He has a star face, which is more than enough for both acting and dancing. Faced with the question from the song and dance troupe leader, Chen Lian flicked the cigarette ashes into the trash can and said, "I'm not from the theater. I'm here to see the performance. You can go in and ask." "Oh, I'm sorry," the song and dance leader said quickly, then glanced at the empty office through the small window on the door, knocked on the door and leaned forward to ask. "I don't know, just wait here for a while." The eldest sister in the office looked up and replied. The leader of the song and dance troupe smiled and nodded and said thank you, then exited the office and turned to Lu Xiaoli and said, "I'm not here, please wait here for a while. When I get back, you go call me, and I'll go and get the rest of the troupe first. Let's arrange things." Lu Xiaoli was a little anxious, but she had no choice but to nod and said to the leader, "If you're sorry, leader, I'll wait here." The song and dance leader looked at Lu Xiaoli without hesitation, and finally sighed and turned away. Lu Xiaoli was pacing back and forth a little irritably at the door of the office, feeling quite like Mrs. Yang on the stage, looking forward to her loved one's anxiety. Chen Lian smoked a cigarette and looked at Lu Xiaoli, who looked gloomy. He felt that he was very lucky. After the performance, he could watch Mrs. Yang again. Perhaps Chen Lian's gaze was a bit direct, and Lu Xiaoli, who was restless in her thoughts, also noticed it. She stopped and nodded apologetically at him. Chen Lian knew that she had misunderstood, but instead of explaining, he praised, "Mrs. Yang just now was very good. I look forward to your performance tomorrow." Lu Xiaoli was stunned for a moment, then nodded and said, "Thank you." It seemed a bit impolite to just say thank you. After all, they were the audience coming to watch the performance, so he added, "It may be earlier tomorrow. Remember to come earlier if you want to see it." Chen Lian smiled, put out the cigarette butt in his hand and threw it into the trash can. "I just heard you said you wanted to change the order. This thing is probably difficult, so don't have high expectations." After hearing Chen Lian's words, a trace of helplessness flashed across Lu Xiaoli's face, and she softly replied, "I know, but there is nothing I can do, I have to try." Chen Lian was actually quite curious as to why Lu Xiaoli changed the order of appearance. For stage actors, the most important criterion is that the stage is bigger than the sky. Generally no one would make such a request as Lu Xiaoli's. However, this was a private matter, and Chen Lian would not ask any more questions. He just nodded and replied, "I hope everything goes well for you. Your dancing is really great. You will definitely become a celebrity in the future." It's just that she didn't rely on dancing. Chen Lian still admired her for being able to give up dancing that she had persisted in for so many years, and she had already achieved something. "Thanks." Facing the encouragement and affirmation from strangers, Lu Xiaoli's complexion improved a lot in the past few years. She had encountered resistance and opposition from her family, and she was really about to give up. The two stood at the door of the theater office and chatted. "Are you waiting for someone too?" Lu Xiaoli asked curiously. "Yes," Chen Lian nodded and explained, "she came with a friend. She has a friend in the theater and went to say hello." "Know someone from the theater?" Lu Xiaoli suddenly asked, "What does your friend's friend do in the theater?" "Ah," Chen Lian was stunned for a moment and vaguely guessed Lu Xiaoli's thoughts. He shook his head and said, "I don't know, he should be a middle-level or high-level person. It's not that the middle and senior management of the theater will come forward to send the leaders to watch the performance, I just don't know what the specific position is." Hearing Chen Lian's words, Lu Xiaoli nodded slightly and looked at him with hesitant eyes, but still did not say whether she could help introduce him. Chen Lian saw Lu Xiaoli's hesitation, thought for a moment and said, "I'll ask you later, if I can help you." "Really?" Lu Xiaoli's eyes lit up and she said with surprise, "Thank you. If possible, I'll treat you and your friend to dinner. You don't have to be so polite. It's a matter of debate whether it can work out or not. Maybe I'm just a small leader and can't help you. This kind of thing is uncertain, who can guarantee that it will succeed?" Besides, Chen Lian didn't know whether Gong Li's friends would be willing to help. Changing the order of performances is not that simple. "Thank you anyway," Lu Xiaoli said with some gratitude. When you encounter difficulties in a strange environment, you will be really touched if someone can lend a helping hand. Even if you can't help in the end, you will still be grateful. Chen Lian shook his head and said nothing. He turned and glanced at the end of the corridor where footsteps could be heard, and saw Gong Li and a few people walking over talking and laughing. Gong Li saw Chen Lian from far away. She recognized at a glance that the dancer opposite Chen Lian was the MRS Yang dancer. A trace of suspicion flashed in her eyes, but the expression on her face did not change at all. A man walking with Gong Li had his hands behind his back and asked with a kind smile, "When will the movie between you and Veuve be completed?" "Now we are waiting for him to come back with another Cannes Film Festival." When Gong Li heard this question, she suddenly thought of what Chen Lian said in Suzhou at that time. This movie might not win the award, but it's better to know this conclusion yourself and not tell others. The filming may not be completed until next year. Director Chen is very attentive to this movie and the filming is relatively slow, Gong Li explained with a smile. "Then you will definitely win a prize," the theater manager, who is also Gong Li's friend, said with a smile. "You will come back with the Best Actress trophy this time." "I hope so," Gong Li smiled, but she knew in her heart that there was little hope. It would be nice to be nominated. The theater manager and the leader both smiled and thought that Gong Li was being modest. She was the domestic actress who had won the most awards at the 3 major European film festivals. As long as she performed well, she would be a promising actress. Is that your friend in front of you? Is he also an actor? The theater manager knew that Gong Li came with a friend today, so he took the initiative to ask. Gong Li struggled for a while and said, "Okay, he is a painter or a photographer. I was asking you to help organize the exhibition just to help him." The theater manager suddenly realized, thought for a while and said, "I think about it. I went to the film festival held by the National Art Museum of China in the end. I heard it was quite successful." After the leader, who was walking at the front with his hands behind his back, heard this, he looked sideways at Gong Li and asked, "Is your name Chen Lian?" "Do you know Director Wang?" Gong Li asked in surprise. The leader named Director Wang nodded, and then said, "Someone mentioned in the meeting 2 days ago that the higher UPS are planning to support some promising young artists. The promising here is very interesting. There is another thing that Director Wang did not say. Why would the meeting support young artists? The focus of the meeting that day was to discuss the elimination of the old Summer Palace Painters Village. Hundreds of people gather together to criticize various issues all day long. There is a huge hidden danger. If things go wrong, they will become like those people in the East Village who create artistic works that have a negative impact on society. Artists also need management and guidance, but they cannot be beaten to death with a stick. They must be attacked and supported at the same time. As for supporting artists, it goes without saying. Chen Lian's previous film festivals have had some positive effects on society, so naturally some people will remember him." When Gong Li heard Director Wang say that the higher UPS wanted to support a group of young artists, she immediately knew that Chen Lian must be on the list, otherwise how could a leader remember the name Chen Lian? A few people were walking and chatting. When they came to the door of the office, Chen Lian didn't know who the 2 people who came with Gong Li were, so he nodded as a greeting. Director Wang looked at Chen Lian's refreshing and uneven hairstyle, and immediately felt a lot of affection. It was much more pleasing to the eye than those artists with long hair. The key is that he is much better looking than those people and does not have the aura of a dangerous element. "Are you Chen Lian?" Director Wang asked with a smile, then reached out and patted Chen Lian on the shoulder and said, "You're a good young man. Art should be like you. It would be great if all young artists were like you." Chen Lian was extremely puzzled. When Director Wang wanted to reach out and pat him on the shoulder, if Gong Li hadn't kept winking, he almost wouldn't have taken a step back to avoid it. After listening to Director Wang's words, although Chen Lian didn't know who he was, he still squeezed out a smile and replied, "Thank you." Gong Li quickly stood up and introduced, "Lian, this is Director Wang from the Ministry of Culture, and this is Manager Lu from the theater." Director Wang waved his hand and said modestly, "It's off-duty time now, don't call me director, we are all art workers." Director Wang is right, we are all literary and art workers. Manager Lu also agreed with a smile. Director Wang is right. Chen Lian looked at Director Wang, who was carrying an official accent, and then listened to Manager Liu's words. The corners of his eyes twitched. It's so convincing." Lu Xiaoli, who was standing nearby, looked at the scene and was extremely surprised. Director of the Ministry of Culture? Big star Gong Li? The man I was talking to just now is an artist. What is his name? Why did I forget to ask my name? What did others call him just now? What is Chen doing?